What if Naruto possessed the power of every Zanpakuto in the Bleach universe? Armed with abilities beyond imagination and aided by the mysterious masked shinobi known as Taka, Naruto sets out to stop the Akatsuki before they can capture the tailed beasts. As he races to save the other Jinchuriki, the fate of the ninja world changes forever. Chapter 1. Naruto Uzumaki glanced at the sword at his side even as he walked up to the village gates he had left nearly 5 years ago. This isn't going to be fun, Naruto thought to himself. You're telling me, his tenant spoke up. It's boring in here again. Shut up, Kyubi. Naruto spoke up before seeing the guards snap to attention when they saw him and stare at the blonde. He had changed a lot in 5 years. He had of course grown taller and his extreme training gave him muscle, but even though it looked somewhat bulky, it didn't slow him down. His blonde hair was slicked back and streaked with red and black, and a silver band kept it tied back in a ponytail that reached his shoulder blades, and a black band replaced his forehead protector. But there was no plate on it. His once blue eyes had turned cat-like and dark purple, and his whisker marks had almost entirely faded from his face. His tan complexion had darkened to be a somewhat dark golden. He had changed his clothing from an orange jumpsuit to black pants and sandal. He wore a black long-sleeved shirt over fishnet armor along with silver arm guards over the sleeves. He wore a dark gray armored vest over that and a sash with the kanji for death, and the kanji guardian along with it was tied around his waist. A pair of kunai holsters were placed at either side of the base of his spine with a ninja pouch at his back, covering the kunai holsters. Another set of kunai holsters were strapped to his legs, and the visible portions of his arms at the wrist were covered in tattoos and seals. He wore black glove with metal plates along the fingers and on the back of the hand. His sword was secured to his waist on the sash he wore, and he kept one hand on it. Uzumaki? One of the guards asked, and Naruto recognized them as Gamma Shiranui and Shikaku Nara. The one and only. Naruto spoke with a grin as he passed them. I'm here to see the Hokage. My training's over with. You've been gone for 5 years. You can't just expect to see the Hokage so soon without going through procedures. Shikaku told Naruto, who sighed as he pinched the bridge of his nose. Listen, I'll explain it all to Hokage-san, but I just don't have the time right now. Naruto spoke before he vanished. What the? Gunma asked as one moment Naruto was there and the next he was gone. How did he get so fast? Naruto reappeared in the Hokage office in front of a shocked Tsunade and an expecting Jiraiya. Took you long enough, Naruto. I was starting to think you had stopped at a bar. Jiraiya commented as he handed a scroll over to Tsunade. Since he's finally here, I've got to get going. See you later, Tsunade. Jiraiya spoke up before vanishing in a puff of smoke. Naruto, what the hell are you doing in here? Tsunade demanded as soon as her fellow Sannin left. I was told to be here by Jiraiya-sensei. Naruto answered back. You do want to report on my training? Correct, Hokage-san. Since when do you call Jiraiya anything but Ero Sennin? Tsunade asked him, mildly shocked at his use of honorifics. And what about calling me Bachan? It was unprofessional, and it's been 5 years. I had some growing up to do. Naruto told her. I'll like to ask to apply to ANBU once this is all over. I have a scroll containing a list of my abilities and Jiraiya should have given it to you. He has, and I'm impressed, but I like to see things myself before deciding on anything when it comes to shinobi promotions. I want to see what you've got during a test. You and Sakura will be going up against Kakashi for a test to reinstate Team 7. Tsunade told him as Naruto nodded. When is it? Naruto asked. In the next hour, Jiraiya said you had nothing to do, so I decided to move it up. They should already be there even. Tsunade told Naruto as she stood up. Come with me. She vanished in a burst of speed and Naruto followed after her with ease. They stopped at a crowded training ground and Naruto silently walked up to Sakura and Kakashi. When will the test begin? Naruto asked after greeting the two. After I explain it all to you. Kakashi spoke as he drew out 2 bells. This one is different from the one you had when you became Genin. You'll have to take the bells by sunrise tomorrow, or this if off and Team 7 is done. Think you can do it? Kakashi asked the 2 shinobi. Sakura only tightened the gloves around her hands as Naruto reached to his side and grasped the hilt of his sword. Good then. Come at me with the intent to kill. Kakashi told the 2 before he raised his forehead protector up and revealed his Sharingan. I won't be pulling any punches either. So begin. Sakura was about to leap forward when Naruto stopped her with a hand on her shoulder. I can handle Hataki-san and my fighting style is a bit too destructive to work in a pair, Naruto told Sakura. I'll be waiting to save you when he kicks your ass, Sakura told Naruto as she stepped back and leapt into the trees. He fully drew his sword as he held it point first towards the ground. Bankai, Naruto whispered as he allowed the sword to fall. It slipped into the ground like it was water as the area around him darkened. Scatter, Senbonzakura Kageyoshi, Naruto whispered as several corridors of large blades rose out of the ground and then broke apart into countless of petals. What the? Tsunade spoke from the sidelines as she observed the ability. Senkei, Senbonzakura Kageyoshi, Naruto spoke and the training field was consumed by a vortex of the petals before it cleared to show a dome made of several dozen rows of thousands of glowing swords with each row on top of the other. Kakashi Hataki, observe this technique and recognize its beauty in its simplicity, as it will be the last thing you shall see. Naruto spoke as one of the swords flew to his hands. This is Senkei, the technique that will bring about your death. Kakashi glanced around him at the swords surrounding him, giving up a pink glow as Naruto stared at him emotionlessly before vanishing from sight. Kakashi narrowly brought up a kunai in time to block the sword, and that itself only brought him a few moments to jump back as Naruto cut through the kunai almost without even trying. As Kakashi was in the air, Naruto pointed his fingers at him and 3 of the swords broke apart into petals before surging at him. Kakashi formed several hand signs and spewed out a stream of flames that the petals sliced through with ease. But this brought Kakashi time as it created a smokescreen. Naruto stood calmly within it before turning and catching his teacher's wrist as he tried to attack from behind before throwing him into the ground as he threw his sword like a javelin at him only for Kakashi to clap his hands together with the blade between them, the tip of it cutting into his nose. Kakashi grabbed the sword by the hilt and made to fling it at Naruto only to have to drop it as Naruto struck him in the gut with a palm strike. Naruto snatched the sword out the air without moving from his crouch from when he struck Kakashi inside. Bankai Tensa Zangetsu, Naruto spoke as moments later he was consumed in a black and crimson vortex and exited it with his appearance changed. He wore a white undershirt with a black shahakusho over it, open at the front but held together with 3 black X's, and it flared out to 3 coattails behind him with the inside white. Gloves were on his hands, black but the underside white with small white X marks on both the back of his hands and large ones on his forearms. The sword in his hand had changed as well to be black with a jagged manjitsuba and chain going from the bottom of the black hilt to his glove in a loop. The sword was also very long, almost 1.5 meters, with a jagged tip and 3 protrusions at the end of the blade. I only do this to end this quickly, Kakashi, Naruto told the stunned Jonin before he vanished. Kakashi collapsed to the ground with a gash in his chest as Naruto appeared behind him. Black and red energy began leaking off the blade as he swiped it behind him and released a black and red crescent at Kakashi. Getsuga Tensho. A massive explosion engulfed Senkei and blasted it apart as Naruto slid his sword into its sheath, it having been resealed. What the hell was that, Naruto? Tsunade demanded as Shizune and Sakura began healing Kakashi, and Shizune soon called Ino over as well. I was told to approach with the intent to kill, and I did so, Naruto answered before glancing behind him and snatching a kunai out of the air and grabbed the scroll attached to it. Of course Taka does something like this, Naruto thought with a sigh as he ripped the scroll off the end of the kunai. He opened the scroll and read over it before handing it back. So they're moving out finally. I guess I was a little too flashy, Naruto commented as Tsunade took a deep breath before speaking. Naruto, my office now, Tsunade ordered him. Of course, I will explain everything there, Naruto told her before vanishing and kicked up a cloud of dust. Incredible, that was pure speed. Guy spoke up as he appeared next to Tsunade. Not even I can go that fast, he's already at the Hokage Tower. All of you. None of this leaves this field, and Asuma, Ino Shikacho, kill all of the root here, Tsunade ordered as Asuma vanished in a burst of speed and there were screams and grunts from the trees around them. Asuma returned in a few minutes, tossing a body off his shoulder. Kurenai, I've left him and 3 others alive. They were the captains. Asuma spoke as Kurenai stepped forward and placed a hand on their forehead as Shikaku and Choza stepped out of the forest with 2 other bodies, with Inoichi stepping out next with a body slung over his shoulder with his eyes closed and 1 hand on their temple. Ino, help me with this. Inoichi told his daughter, who nodded before grabbing one of the barely alive root and doing what her father showed her to do. She applied several parasitic-type genjutsu invented by the Yamanaka clan. They fed off of the victim's chakra and created their worst fears, lowering any mental defenses. She next sent in probes to search for traps and trigger them so she could advance unheeded. It took nearly 30 minutes, but she opened her eyes a few seconds after Inoichi finished the last root off. "I've gotten everything." Ino spoke up before pressing a hand on her father's shoulder and opening up her mind to him. Inoichi entered his daughter's mind and in seconds exited it with what he needed. "Your defenses have improved, but I want you to add more traps and a few more diversions. It would take me a few days to break into the main part, but I know you can do better. The enemy may not need you alive after they enter your mind, while I wish for my enemy's mind to remain intact." Inoichi told his daughter, who nodded. All the shinobi present then vanished in a burst of speed and arrived at the Hokage office in a few minutes, where Naruto was playing a poker game with two shadow clones, each different from him. One had black eyes where his were violet and wore a dark brown, almost black cloak with the end jagged and edged and a ragged white dress shirt underneath. The other wore a crimson cloak with 9-tail-like designs on the back of it with crimson eyes instead of violet, with thickened and broadened whisker marks as well as claw-like nails. "How the hell do you keep winning?" The crimson-eyed one finally spoke. "We've played 3 games in the last 30 minutes and you won all of them. Maybe he's just that damn good?" The black-eyed one spoke up in a calm and smooth voice, nearly the opposite of the threatening and deep one of the other. "Quiet you!" the crimson-eyed one snapped as they flipped over the table. "I quit." He vanished in a burst of red chakra and smoke, and the other side before nodding to Naruto before vanishing in a burst of smoke and blue and black chakra. Naruto glanced at the ruined game before dropping his hands and pressing his hand down on a seal on the table. It vanished in a puff of smoke as he turned to Tsunade. "Hokage-san, I'm glad you have finally arrived." Naruto spoke as he turned to her, his eyes emotionless and face blank. "What do you wish to know?" "What is that sword?" Tsunade asked him as she sat down at her desk. "I call it a Zanpakuto, the only one in exist," Naruto answered. "Soul Slayer?" Tsunade asked. "Why?" "Simple, really." Naruto spoke as he drew the blade and pointed it towards Tsunade. "The steel is my soul and the sharpness is my will. If my soul was to ever be broken, the steel will become brittle. If my will ever weakens, then the blade will grow dull." "Interesting, what does it do?" Tsunade asked as she leaned forward, her chin resting in her hands. "Many things, let me show you." Naruto spoke with a smirk before holding the blade out horizontally and placing a hand at the base of the blade. "Roar Zabamaru!" Naruto called out as the blade glowed crimson and began changing until it was a large 6-segmented blade, each segment wide with a spike at the side facing away from the blade and being larger than the last. Naruto slashed forward and the sword acted almost like a whip as it lashed out, extending to many times its length and bouncing off the wall a few times to surround Naruto in a rapidly moving cage of blades. "Is that all?" Tsunade asked, almost unimpressed. "Hardly." Naruto spoke with a grin as he flowed chakra through the blade. "Banaki, Hihio Zabamaru." In a massive burst of crimson energy, the sword transformed into a massive mixture of the skeleton of a snake and the sword Naruto just wielded, Zabamaru, but with more spikes added to the vertebrate with a red fur frill behind the snake head, a few times the size of Naruto as he controlled its size. "I can fire concentrated blasts of chakra from the snake head with this form, either a constant stream, a short burst, a barrage, and several more variants I am still developing. I can of course combine it with my other blades, and I am still working out combinations. The best is with the blade named Tenken and its Bankai Kakujo Tengen Myo." Naruto spoke up as Tsunade nodded. "Show me." Tsunade ordered him as Naruto sighed before his chakra flared. "Bankai Kakujo Tengen Myo." Naruto roared as he was engulfed in a blast of power before Tsunade suddenly felt herself vanish and reappear behind the Hokage monument, where Naruto appeared in front of her with a massive armor-clad Hihio Zabamaru with a massive armored giant wielding Hihio Zabamaru as he wielded Zabamaru. "Anything empowered with this Bankai becomes much stronger and makes it that much deadly." Naruto spoke up from on the giant. "I can reinforce the armor with chakra and adjust the size as I see fit." "Anything else?" Naruto asked as he placed Zabamaru on his shoulder and the giant mirrored it. "Is this a Kekii Genkai?" Tsunade asked. "No, but only Uzumaki can use it," Naruto answered. "If a normal person was to even touch a sword, all of their chakra will be ripped from them, The blades only accept Uzumaki chakra. You'll have to modify it. A blade that powerful will ensure Konoha's position as one of the strongest hidden villages. Tsunade told him. Like I said before, it only accepts Uzumaki chakra. If anyone else even touches it and doesn't have Kage-level reserves, they'll die instantly. To get a picture of that, just imagine Samehade and then multiply it by 10. Naruto told Tsunade, and before Tsunade could speak again, he vanished. He appeared in front of the many shadow clones he had sent on ahead and saw them and a group of others working on the Namikaze/Uzumaki clan compound. Is this it? Naruto asked them as they simply nodded. Then you are dismissed. The shadow clone dispelled itself as Naruto walked into the compound, observing the several dozen clones still patrolling the compound. This is a bit overkill, Taka. Naruto spoke up as he entered the kitchen and began making himself a meal. It was necessary, a voice answered. Once I had cleared out the route inside, I found the compound in shambles and I had to fix it, knowing you would return here tonight, Naruto Dano. Just get down here, Taka. Naruto called out as a figure wearing a black trench coat and white mask with hawk-styled motif in blue along it. As you wish, Naruto Dano. The now identified Taka spoke up, barely containing his laughter at Naruto's expression. Would you quit that already? Naruto shouted as he was on the verge of snapping. Of course, Naruto Dano. Taka answered before collapsing into laughter. I'll kill you, Naruto roared as he drew his Zanpakuto. Reap Kazashini. The blades transformed into two large Kuzurigama-like weapons with a spike on the top of the blade with one blade inverted, giving it the appearance of a pinwheel, and both connected to the other by a chain. Taka leapt up in time to dodge the blades of air sent at him by Naruto, but not one of the thrown blades, acting like a buzz saw as it spun towards Taka. Taka managed to escape with only a scrape on his shoulder before Naruto swung both blades forward in intersecting arcs. Two shadow clones burst into life and stopped the blades with their bodies before dispelling as Taka dropped to the ground to avoid the blades. You really don't like the honorifics then, do you? Taka asked as he slowly stood up. Shut up, Taka. Naruto answered back as the two blades glowed briefly before shrinking and merging back into his katana, which he sheathed. No need to be so violent, Naruto. I'm just here to give my report. Taka spoke as he walked up to Naruto. It was a good thing I can make clones so easily, you could have killed me. Just give me the scroll. Naruto snapped as he held out his hand. All right. Taka spoke as he reached into his pocket and withdrew a scroll. This was all I could get. Naruto quickly took it and opened it, and he grinned as he read it over. This is good enough, Naruto told Taka. The moment Akatsuki makes a move, I'll be able to counter pretty easily, but just to be safe, be on standby to intercept them if it comes to it. Understood, Taka answered as several blue-skinned ninja rose out of the shadows. I've planted the seals you gave to alert me if Akatsuki makes any attempts on the Jinchuriki. Make sure they don't capture any, Naruto told him before leaving the room. I don't fail my missions, Uzumaki-san, Taka answered as he stepped back and into a shadow spreading from the wall. Taka seemingly slipped into the shadows and was gone from Konoha and the Land of Fire entirely in a few moments. Naruto finished making his tea, deciding to skip dinner and instead read a report from Taka. He was interrupted midway through the report by a seal on the back of his hand activating. So Akatsuki has launched an attack finally, against Gaara no less. You would think they would wait for him to leave the desert. Ichibi is much more cooperative after the little talk I had with him, Naruto commented as he stood up, and the seal allowed him to reach Tsunagakure in seconds. He saw Gaara battling against Deidara of the Akatsuki before Taka intervened. Kunai shot out of the buildings from tags as Deidara's clay bird flew low, and cut it to pieces as Taka leapt forward, and a chain-bound Deidara as a chakra suppression tag was slapped onto Deidara's leg. Naruto sensed Deidara's partner Sasori nearby and grinned as he formed several Kage Bunshin that rushed towards the Akatsuki member. Each summoned either Zabamaru or Kazashini to them with a grin as Sasori readied himself for another Jinchuriki rushing towards him. 5 minutes before Naruto arrives. Sand coffin. Damn it. A blonde-haired figure in a black cloak marked with red clouds on a large white bird modeled after a hawk ducked under a tendril of sand before opening their closed hands, and white moths poured out of them and what were actual mouths on their hands. Give up already, kid. Your sand isn't going to stand up to my art, the blonde shouted just before he had to dodge a hail of black arrows as they formed a hand sign. Katsu. Explosions lit up the sky suddenly as sand rapidly pierced through them and towards the figure and quickly formed a rapidly shrinking sphere around the figure and their bird. "Oh, you've got to be kidding me!" The blonde snapped as they dived off the doomed bird. Katsu! The sand exploded outward before rapidly forming into a dense sphere, and the blonde's eyes widened. "Damn! He played me!" "Sunaten! Grand bullet barrage!" a voice called out as the sphere seemed to rapidly break down. "The bastard doesn't stand a chance. I've infused the Ichibi's chakra into that sand. All I need is one hit and he's bound in seals. He won't be able to mold chakra or move." The red-haired teen was safely enclosed in a sphere of sand floating in the air as the aerial battle intensified as the blonde-haired figure he was fighting formed several hand signs before taking in a deep breath. "Doton! Stone armor!" the blonde called out in moments before the pebble-sized projectiles of sand impacted him. "Damn it!" the red-haired cursed as the blonde created a giant white hawk in a cloud of smoke. A swarm of clay dragonflies shot towards Gaara, who swiftly sent tendrils of sands to tear through them only for the mad bomber to maneuver around the sand easily on the clay hawk. "You're not getting me this fast, kid. This is one of my fastest birds," the blonde shouted as they reached into a pouch on their side and the mouths on their hands ate some of the clay inside it. Chewing it for a moment to infuse chakra into it, Deidara drew his hands out and quickly formed something from the chakra-infused clay as Gaara's sand continued to chase after him with no rest for the S-rank shinobi. "Try these, kid," Deidara shouted as he threw his hands out, and moments later normal-sized hawks burst into existence in clouds of smoke as they soared towards Gaara. "Fool," Gaara commented as he rose up several streams of sand from the desert and rapidly encircled himself with it as he condensed the sphere of sand already around him. Deidara saw his opportunity and didn't let up as he let loose several handfuls of clay moths at Gaara's sand defenses. "What is he planning? He knows he can't get past my defenses no matter what he throws at me. I'm pretty sure that's all the clay he has too. He keeps going into those pouches before each attack so he can't form it on his own." The Jinchuriki of the Ichibi thought even as he infused more of the sand with his chakra, making it faster. "I'm going to have to use that one soon enough if this plan doesn't work," Deidara thought as he plunged his hands into his clay pouches and cursed at the small amount of clay left, a little less than half in each of them. "And after this I'll have just enough clay to maybe make it and finish him off while he's distracted if our info's right. Let's see how you do against these," Deidara shouted as he held something in his hands and threw them into the air. In 4 massive clouds of smoke 4 dragons appeared around Deidara, and Gaara cursed once. He recognized them from intel Naruto sent him months ago. "Those are his C2 dragons, versatile and dangerous even when I'm ready for them." Naruto himself admitted Taka didn't gather much information before being forced to retreat. The mouth of each dragon bulged and Gaara cursed as he swiftly thought up a plan. "Let's go with a bomb run first," Deidara thought as he floated between the dragons. Each dragon shot forward as their mouths opened and small clay bugs rained out of them. Sand shot up from the desert around them with black vein-like markings covering it. "I need your chakra, Shikaku," Gaara mentally spoke. "Don't bother, kid. I've been dying to take this psycho down." The voice of Shikaku resounded in Gaara's head as he felt a surge of chakra speed through his body, and it was followed by several more. Deidara formed several hand signs, and the clay bombs broke apart into a swarm of 4-winged clay birds that darted forward in mass towards Gaara. "I've got this, kid. Take him down already," Shikaku roared within Gaara's mind. "I pride myself on an absolute defense. They won't touch you." "Thank you, Shikaku," Gaara mentally replied as he formed several hand signs. "Desert style. Grand desert burial," Gaara called out as massive amounts of sand shot up around him and rapidly grabbed the dragons in the air. Deidara only grinned as he formed a single hand sign. "Got you, punk, Katsu," Deidara shouted as a massive explosion lit up the air and threw away the sand enclosing them and shaved off several layers of Gaara's only sand shield. Deidara grinned as he shot towards Gaara on his clay bird when an unexpected shout drew his attention. "Now!" A voice suddenly shouted and a hail of kunai tore through the hawk, and a shunsin born from instinct saved the blonde from death. Deidara swiftly formed another bird on his way down only for Taka to leap from his hiding place and cut his clay bird to pieces with kunai sharpened with chakra, as the masked ninja then leapt forward and bound Deidara in chains as he slapped a chakra-suppressing tag on the blonde shinobi's leg. "Gaara, are you all right?" A voice called up and the Jinchuriki turned to see Taka. Naruto's agent throughout the elemental nations seemingly flowed in the air next to his sphere of sand. "I'm fine, Taka. Is Naruto here yet?" Gaara asked in reply, and the hawk-masked figure nodded. "I've informed him several minutes ago. He is already dealing with Deidara's partner Kazekage-sama." Taka answered, and Gaara let out a sigh of relief. "Good, I was worried that one would attack instead of the other one. I feared the village wouldn't last long if he was to fight, even against myself and the Ichibi working together." Gaara spoke up as he allowed himself to lower back down to the Kazekage Tower. A massive cloud of smoke shrouding the walls of the village drew the attention of both suddenly, and Gaara's eyes widened at the mass of red floating above it now. "That is Red's secret technique. A grand performance?" a shaggy red-haired teen shouted. His body wooden from what could be seen of his exposed upper body, with a scroll holder held on his back and 4 propeller-like blades at each hip, along with a long metal cable with a stinger in his empty and open stomach, along with a core in the left side of his chest with the kanji for scorpion on it. "Oh, you've got to be kidding me. 1,000 puppets!" one of the many blonde figures around the wall shouted. "How are we supposed to defeat all of this when boss is only giving us Zabumaru and Kazashini to work with against Sasori when he has this up his sleeve?" "Who said we were stuck with them?" another asked as their segmented sword transformed back into the basic katana before they gripped it in both hands, and most of the figures burst into blue mist and shot into them as they widened their stance. "Turn all creation to ash. Ryujin Jaka." The night sky surrounded the village of Suna suddenly changed to a mixture of red and orange as flames roared to life at the village gates and rose into a towering inferno. "You'll make a great puppet, kid. Too bad I have to destroy you out of principle," the red-haired shouted as the blonde allowed the upper portion of the outfit to fall as they cut it to pieces with a kunai. "You insolent little brat. You don't understand a thing about what's about to happen," the blonde called out as the flames around him shot into the blade before they began chuckling. "But what should I really expect from a brat who thinks he's immortal just because he's in a wooden body?" The red-haired simply chuckled as the blue strands emitting from his chest grew brighter, and the mass of red-cloaked figures readied themselves to attack. "You can talk all you want, Uzumaki. My ultimate performance cannot be stopped no matter what type of power you have. I could bring down even the Kyuubi itself with this technique, so the diluted power you hold from being its container is nothing to me." The redhead spoke up as the clacking of wood hitting wound resounded around him and the group of blonde figures. "Since I'm using Ryujin Jaka, you guys will have to think of something a little below it to use." The clone using the elemental type Zanpakuto told the remaining 8 clones behind him. "Don't worry, I still have Zabumaru. Kazashini is good enough. I'll watch your flank. Grow Hozukamaru. Pray Santa Teresa. Snap Tobium. Scatter Senbin Zakura. Grind Pantera. Kickabout Los Lobos." An explosion of chakra covered all of the clones, and moments later blasts of chakra rained out at the puppets. Sasori grinned as several stepped forward and massive shields of chakra burst into life to stop the blasts. "I'm one of your opponents, kid. You shouldn't forget about someone like me, especially when Los Lobos is loaded." A clone spoke from within the cloud of smoke. The same clone who spoke stepped forward with 2 ornamental pistols in their hands and dressed in black skin-tight pants with a jacket over a double-breasted vest with gray fur lining the neck of the jacket and gray fur leggings and armbands extending from his knees and elbows respectively, with 2 black ribbon-covered bandoliers emerging from his upper back and disappearing into his upper forearms. All in all, with gray fur-covered holster, the clone appeared to be a Wild West gunslinger. "Don't take all of them, man. I'm your backup." Another clone spoke as they stepped forward, and they were as drastically changed as the other one, maybe more actually. "Santa Teresa is praying for death now." 3 sets of arms with all 6 covered in an insect-like carapace with clawed fingers, with each hand holding a scythe resembling the arms of a praying mantis with a small golden tassel at the end of each staff. The clone also had a golden marking extending from their forehead to below their right eye with a crescent moon-shaped horn on his head, the left side bigger than the right. "I'm here too, you assholes." Another spoke as they stepped up, probably the most different. "Pantera has been dying to tear up something since boss last used it." The clones' teeth had become jagged along with their blonde hair growing down to their knees and becoming straight. Their hands turned into black claws while their feet changed into black clawed paws, along with a slender whip-like tail emerging from the base of his spine. His entire body was covered in a form-fitting white segmented armor with 3 blades on each forearm and leg, with the blades in descending order, with the longest closest to the elbow and the shortest closest to his hands, with the same going for his knees, the longest at the knee and the shortest at the ankle, with a long jagged blade extending from the back of his claves. A white jagged crown-like piece adorned his forehead, and he grinned as he allowed his claws to extend to nearly 5 inches of razor-sharp steel-like claws adorning the tip of his fingers and his toes with chakra flow sharpening every blade along their body. I guess we're on defense. A clone wielding Zabumaru told the one wielding Kazushini as both leapt back to guard the entrance of the figure. I'll help you, I guess. A third clone spoke up as they walked over with a spear with a waxwood shaft and a red horse hair tassel at the pommel. Hosokumaru is dying for a fight, even if it's with this loser. I'm with you guys. A fourth spoke as they walked up with the katana unchanged unless for 2 prongs extending from one side of the blade with one at the top and one at the bottom along with 1 prong at the bottom of the other side, Tobium. Then let's deal with this kid. The clone-wielding Ryujin Jaka spoke as flames roared to life around them. Let's go! The clone-wielding Pantera shouted as they let out a roar that tossed away several puppets charging them. He leapt into the midst of them, using devastating animalistic taijutsu that took full advantage of the blades on their armor. Eat this! The clone using Los Lobos shouted before rapidly firing shot after shot forward that tore apart the puppets in his way as he steadily walked forward. The clone wielding Santa Teresa only let out crazed shouts as they turned into a whirlwind of death with their 6 scythe-like blades charged with chakra. Fireballs rained down on the puppets nearby the exit into the village, and each exploded once contact was made. A small stream of petals nimbly and effortlessly tore through the 12 puppets charging towards them. Sasori drew another scroll from off his back and threw it on the ground as it unrolled itself, and more red-robed puppets tore into the air from it and charged towards the clones. Burn! The flames of Ryujin Jaka roared forward and incinerated the newly released puppets. You forgot about me, Sasori of the Red Sand. The clone-wielding Ryujin Jaka roared as flames formed a circle between him and Sasori. Sasori actually laughed as a compartment in his arm opened and a scroll slid out of it and he threw it into the air, a chakra string snaking out of one of his fingers and pulling it open. I guess you must really want to die then. There's no way you can even think of defeating me with this puppet. Sasori spoke as he was consumed in a cloud of smoke. The 8 clones outside of the flames stood in a circle around it as Sasori's red secret technique. A grand performance still surrounded them. Sasori's blind now with Ryujin Jaka's fire. This stuff is just automatic now. Zabumaru spoke up. We can deal with his toys easily now. Each of us gets 100 or so and we take them down. I'm game. Pantera spoke up as he flexed his claws. Let's do this now. No. Los Lobos snapped as he held his guns at his side. We need a plan first. They may break for the village if we all just charge out. I'm on defense with Kazushini. We'll keep them back. Tobium spoke up as both clones leapt back to the gates. I'm on defense here with Santa Teresa. Senbenzakura spoke up as he and Santa Teresa stood in front of the fire as Senbenzakura reformed into its blade. Sasori may call those puppets to him, we're gonna make sure he can't. Boss just sent us all a boost of chakra, so we can probably all use Bankai right now. Bankai. Scatter. Senbenzakura Kageyoshi. The blade fell into the ground and out rose several corridors of massive blades that broke apart into petals. Bankai. Ryumin Hosokumaru. Hosokumaru called out and moments later the clone wielded a Chinese monk's spade and guandao with both having a traditional horsehair tassel at the hilt and a long cylindrical weight for a pommel. Heavy chains connected both pieces to the center section of the Bankai. The center section resembling an axe blade with a parallel handle forged into the blunt end of it with a dragon crest on the blade above the handle along with a separate one on each pommel of the spade and guandao. Bankai Hihio Zabumaru. Zabumaru called out as in a burst of chakra, the skeletal snake emerged, wrapping protectively around its user. Let's go! Santa Teresa shouted as he charged forward, his 6 scythes spinning wildly. Hikatsu Taiho! Zabumaru shouted as a massive red, sweeping beam of energy tore through a dozen of the puppets. Guerra de la Pantera! Pantera called out as green darts fired out of the segments of their armor, and they fired through the mass of puppets in front of them. A swarm of puppets charged Los Lobos from either side, and they simply held each pistol out. One pointed at either side as they sent an insane amount of chakra to the pistols. Ciro Metralita! Los Lobos called out as a hail of chakra blasts tore through the puppets attacking him from each side. Zabumaru directed Hihio Zabumaru to tear through several large brutish puppets as they tried to bypass him and head towards the village as a scroll was suddenly tossed into the air above the flames, taunting Sasori and Ryujin Jaka. More of them incoming! A clone suddenly shouted as they raced out of the flames before they were dispelled with several swords piercing their stomach. They exploded the moment they were hit and took down the puppets as well. Pantera, deal with them, Los Lobos ordered as said clone grinned before rocketing forward. Pantera destroyed one puppet just by kicking it and launched off it to another that he ripped in half before grabbing the blades it wielded in one of their 6 arms and throwing them like a buzzsaw to cut down 3 more puppets. Pantera channeled a massive amount of chakra to his claws and they glowed, and he grinned before rapidly slashing the air in the direction of 8 dozen puppets emerging from the hovering scroll. Descaron, Pantera called out as he soon added rapid kicks to his attack, and long sharp blades made of chakra launched from the arc of each swing and tore through the puppets as Pantera slammed his elbow into a brutish puppet aiming to strike him from behind. Guerra de la Pantera, Pantera called out a second later, and the puppet shattered by the sheer force of the 5 darts ripping through him. Another puppet sneaking up from behind met Pantera's clawed foot, and the kick tore its head off as Pantera then blitzed forward, sending Descaron after Descaron out as he turned into a twister of claws and blades. Watch out! Zabamaru shouted as he moved Hihio Zabamaru to block the blow of several brutish puppets from slamming Pantera into the ground. Hihio Zabamaru shattered into pieces from the blow and several puppets charged towards the defenseless Zabamaru. Morons! Zabamaru muttered as he channeled chakra through the segments, and the puppets found themselves bound in ropes made of chakra. Zabamaru made a fist with his free hand, and the puppets were turned to wood chips as Hihio Zabamaru reformed. Tobium appeared next to them from a shunsin and swung Tobium upwards, sending a hail of small marble-sized balls of fire into the air. They came down as large as beach balls, and the explosions of fire consumed a dozen each. You need some help? Tobium asked, and Zabamaru nodded, the drain of the chakra ropes getting to him. Give me a minute to rest, but I'll give backup from here. Zabamaru answered as Hihio Zabamaru coiled around the 2 and several segments opened up, allowing Tobium a view outside it. Fire consumed Tobium's blade before the clone pointed it at a group of puppets, and a stream of fire incinerated the puppets entirely. This is going to take a while, Tobium commented with a sigh as he went to another open section, and another stream of flames incinerated 8 more puppets. Santa Teresa tore through the dozens of puppets around him as Los Lobos cut a path to him. Can you get to that scroll near Ryujinjaka? Pantera is running low on chakra. Los Lobos asked Santa Teresa, who shrugged. I'm holding them here from escaping. I can't leave here. Santa Teresa spoke as they cut a hand on either side with a scythe. Gran Rey Ciro, Santa Teresa called out as he fired a massive golden yellow beam of energy. It wiped out most of the puppets nearby, and a double Ciro Metrolita dealt with the rest. You're clear. I'll keep them busy here, Los Lobos told Santa Teresa just as a storm of petals ripped past them. Senbin Sakura stood on the wall as they directed the petals everywhere around the battlefield, using both hands to skewer puppets and crush others as Kazushini stood with him, fending off any attacks by the puppets. Get over here, Kazushini roared as he threw one blade forward, and it wrapped around a dozen puppets before chakra channeled through the chain turned it into a chainsaw that the clone ripped back. The pinwheel-like blade came shooting back with the remains of the puppets falling to the ground, with the clone catching the handle of the blade as it came flying back. Any get by yet? Kazushini asked Senbin Sakura, who nodded. Boss has a few clones using Zangetsu outside. If we can't keep them here, then he'll have them bombard the place. Just as Kazushini finished speaking, several puppets packed with explosives blew a hole in the pedal wall Senbin Sakura formed with a quarter of his bankai, and a few dozen escaped as another collapsed to the ground, scrolls rolling out of their wooden body. Getsuga Tenshu. The faint shout was heard only by those 2 as they were closest, and Senbin Sakura sealed the wall up again before it came down like a tidal wave on the puppet and the scrolls it released. Did you get them? Kazushini asked as he flung one chakra-enhanced pinwheel blade forward and sawed through a dozen puppets before he pulled it back. No, Senbin Sakura answered as the petals were tossed aside by a new wave of puppets released from each scroll. At least a few hundred each. This is getting exhausting, Kazushini muttered as he flung both blades forward, and they cut down a few dozen as they flew back to his hands. Tell boss we need reinforcements, Senbin Sakura spoke up after a few moments. We can't hold them. The pillar of flames exploding outwards caught both their attention as the other clones appeared behind them with a few shunsin. Did he win? Tobium asked. A single figure staggered out of the smoke from the fire, and the clones readied themselves for a fight, just in case. The smoke surrounding Sasori faded to show a blank hunched-over mannequin in front of him, and Ryujin Jaka only tightened his grip on his Zanpakuto. "What the hell is that? It's not even a puppet?" Ryujin Jaka demanded, only for Sasori to chuckle as chakra threads attached to the puppet, and it instantly shot to its full height, and the sound of wood striking would reach the clone's ears as Sasori ran a quick check of the puppet. "That's the beauty of it. This is my greatest creation in the art of puppetry. It is no ordinary puppet that is defined by limitations or being purely offensive or defensive. It is so much more than a mind like you could ever even hope to understand or to even survive in a battle against such a work of art." Sasori answered with his eyes taking on a maniacal glint. "And I'm going to use it to rip you to pieces." The puppet shot forward and Ryujin Jaka rolled out of the way of it before making to cut it in half with a single slash, flames dancing along the length of his sword and roaring forth as he swung. The puppet actually separated, as if it was cut in half, to avoid the strike, and Ryujin Jaka noticed the inside was hollow, but it was filled with seals. "A little bit of everything just in that little glance I managed to get before it closed back up, and they're layered, so a Fuinjutsu master must have worked on this. Even Jiraiya-san had trouble layering seals with Dad's help." Ryujin Jaka grinned as he jumped back to get some distance. "Looks like I brought myself a challenge. If I can keep it intact when I kill Sasori, then boss has a pet project to work on, but if I destroy it, then I'll have to bring Sasori in alive to see who worked on the thing." Sasori's fingers seemed to be dancing as the puppet shot towards Ryujin Jaka, who dodged its blows, its arms forming into wicked-looking curved blades aimed to tear chunks out of him. "Taimatsu!" Ryujin Jaka roared as an inferno roared forth from his sword, racing towards the puppet. Sasori had the puppet shoot into the air to avoid the flames before a seal appeared on each palm and bullets of condensed water shot down on the flames, erupting into small lakes on impact. "Do you think water will stop the flames of Ryujin Jaka?" Ryujin Jaka demanded in a fury at such a thought, and the blade responded in kind as it was engulfed in a blazing inferno as the clone slashed forward, flames roaring forth and evaporating the water, and a pulse of chakra threw away the mist. Sasori's grin only widened as he saw this before he pulled the puppet down. "Detonate!" Sasori shouted, and the puppet seemed to flash before Sasori quickly used an earth release technique to bury himself a few meters underground. Ryujin Jaka covered himself in a sphere of flames that cut into the ground as the puppet exploded. The prison of flames the two were contained in, threatening to be extinguished by the shockwave. A surge of chakra fixed that, and the flames surrounding the clone broke down as Sasori emerged from the ground. "It was a bomb the entire time?" Ryujin Jaka asked Sasori, who only pointed above him as his finger made a clawing motion as he ripped his hands down. "Red's secret technique? Iron Maiden," Sasori called out as the shattered pieces of the puppet seemed to grow into blades as long as a katana and shot down as streaks towards Ryujin Jaka. "You damn brat!" Ryujin Jaka roared as he let loose a wave of super-hot flames, turning the blades to nothing more than ash in his fury. "You dare think a cheap attack like that will defeat the flames of Ryujin Jaka?" Sasori only chuckled as his fingers still danced in the air as Ryujin Jaka cursed when he noticed the ash swirling around him, slowly taking a solid shape before gaining color. "Damn, that puppet really is powerful," Ryujin Jaka thought as he saw the puppet reform from ash right in front of his eyes. "I'm going to need something extra for this." A second katana appeared in his hands with a guard in the shape of a cat head, with the two triangle on top half curving into ear points and the bottom point tapering down into a single point with a dark red handle. "Growl, hey Nico!" Ryujin Jaka commanded, and the blade burst into a storm of ash that swirled around him before taking the shape of a massive jungle cat and roaring, spewing super hot ash everywhere before racing forward. It burst into several streams of ash as it did so and attacked Sasori from all sides as a few streams shot into the air to bombard him while others went around to attack from the sides or behind and all gained super hot sharpened points. "You just keep getting better and better," Sasori called out as the puppet glowed again before seemingly bursting into a dozen duplicates and half raced forward to attack Ryujin Jaka, while the others appeared around Sasori, as with a twitch of his fingers he summoned them to him, seals built into the puppet to allow him to do so. They shot their arms out to the side and ropes of chakra from their palms shot out and connected to the palms of other puppets, and with a burst of chakra from Sasori they formed shields of chakra around him that combined into a dome to stop the ash as those attacking Ryujin Jaka gained a burst of speed. One completely opened their torso to reveal dozens of seals glowing as others appeared on their arms and legs before a hail of weapons shot forward that Ryujin Jaka either melted into molten slag with flames or shredded to dust with ash. Another changed their arms into buzzsaws that slashed wildly in an attempt to bisect the clone, only for Ryujin Jaka to shatter it into wood chips with a single punch the moment it reached his range. Two others broke apart and changed into a multitude of blades that aimed to attack the clone from all sides, only for a dome of ash to appear at the last second to stop them before skewering them on a multitude of spikes erupting from it the instant they were trapped in it, the ash compacting around the blades stabbed in it. The last two made an attempt to attack head-on, using streams of water to deal with the ash and fire. They were stopped in their tracks by spears of flames ripping through them, filled with ash that shot through them moments later before retracting, and the puppets fell in pieces on the ground. "This is getting annoying," Sasori commented, safe within his dome of chakra as he reformed the defeated duplicates and merged them into one puppet, the same blank mannequin as before. A seal appeared on the blank face of the puppet, and it opened up to show a chakra laser weapon charging. "You damn fool," Ryujin Jaka muttered as Hiniko's ash had already filled the puppet and was blocking the barrel as he sent a wave of flames to hammer against Sasori's chakra shield. The shield held, and Ryujin Jaka cursed as he was forced to roll out of the way of the beam of chakra as the puppet allowed itself to be destroyed to fire the weapon. Ryujin Jaka formed a wall of solid, tightly compacted ash a meter thick to stop the beam from piercing the wall of flames before slamming a hand on the ground. "Die already, you impudent brat," Ryujin Jaka shouted as a massive wave of ash roared towards Sasori as a seal formula spread out from his hand. "You first," Sasori shouted back as the puppet reformed and shattered into a multitude of pieces that formed into 36 more puppets that all rushed towards Ryujin Jaka, who growled before waves of ash surged out from the ground around him and crushed the puppets as they crashed down on them, compacting around them and keeping them there. "This kid is strong. He's managed to counter my greatest puppet yet at every turn with his fire and ash, and I can't get rid of either. But where is all that ash coming from? The amount he started with was small, and my puppets aren't being turned to ash with the flame-resistant seals I placed on the wood," Sasori asked himself even as he detonated several pieces of the trapped puppets to open up the ash so some of them could move again. "And I've just lost half of the duplicates with that gambit. If he keeps up that strategy, I'll be down to one soon enough and won't be able to keep up my shield if it comes to that." Sasori sent a chakra thread to a scroll on his back and tossed it out onto the field. "But maybe I can give him a handicap now," Sasori thought as he flashed through hand signs. The scroll exploded into a mass of sand, and Ryujin Jaka cursed. "He's trying to bury the ash and smother the fires. I don't have enough chakra to summon Hiniko again, so I'll have to get the ash out of the way," Ryujin Jaka thought as he raised one hand and the ash shot up as a cloud before he layered the battlefield in the cloud. "But I can also keep him from seeing if his plan works." The ash cloud was densest around Sasori and his chakra shield as Ryujin Jaka sent out a surge of flames from the blade in his hand. Flames rushed forward, and Ryujin Jaka shaped them into a solid spear that seemed modeled after a bird. "Try this one, you brat. Hukin, Phoenix Blade," Ryujin Jaka roared. "No choice. I've got to use it," Sasori yelled in a panic as he rapidly formed several hand signs before slamming a hand on the ground. "Forbidden art. Summoning jutsu. Puppet workshop." Everything within the wall of flames was engulfed in a light before it faded to show the landscape drastically changed. It was as if the two fought in a massive workshop, filled with puppets and their parts with weapons and seal tags littering the tables, and Sasori now sitting cross-legged on a table, chakra threads shooting out of his hands and connecting to everything before fading. "I really hate using this technique," Sasori spoke up as Ryujin Jaka called Hiniko back to him and formed a vortex of ash and flames around himself as he eyed his surroundings warily, ready to consume any attack in fire and ash. "Yeah, why's that?" Ryujin Jaka asked, his body tense and he himself on edge in a place Sasori could summon. "I end up killing people far too quickly for my taste," Sasori answered back as ash shot forward to shred several dozen kunai flung at Ryujin Jaka as his face turned maniacal and he screamed his next sentence. "I prefer to play with them a while, but I just can't control myself sometimes in this place." Launchers lowered from the ceiling and fired a hail of arrows that were incinerated by Ryujin Jaka's flames as the clone cursed as weapons flew at him from all angles, and he quickly pulled Hiniko into action with Ryujin Jaka as he sent fire and ash to intercept. Fire lashed out to incinerate and ash shot forward to consume and shred, but it was slowly closing in on the clone, forced to hold a smaller and smaller area as he felt his chakra slowly being used up. "Damn it, I should have used something besides Hukin. It drained nearly all of my chakra." Ryujin Jaka cursed before he sighed. "I'll have to use Bankai then and hope I take him down with me." The many flames around the workshop suddenly were all absorbed by Ryujin Jaka as the clone held the blade in the air with both hands as the ash swirled around him, forming a protective shredding vortex. Bankai! A massive explosion of fire and chakra consumed the clone and threw away the ash vortex as well as consume all of the weapons launched at him by Sasori as the heat within the workshop rose and rose higher and higher as the orange-red flames changed to a dark foreboding blue. Zanka no Tachi! Ryujin Jaka had changed into a Nodachi with the inner side of the blade jagged and lined with teeth, looking as if it was made to be a saw while the other side was smooth and made to cleanly cut through opponents with the guard non-existent and a black hilt wrapped in golden cloth. So, you've taken me this serious? Sasori asked as his hands shot out and called countless weapons out. But do you really think a longer sword will help you defeat me, when I still have so many weapons to use against you? You fool! Ryujin Jaka growled as he held Zanka no Tachi in both hands. This isn't just a longer sword. Look at the flames around you. Sasori did so and simply rose an artificial eyebrow at the dark blue flames casting a dark light across the room. So you've changed the color of them to blue. I can still kill you. Sasori answered as the clone only smirked as he shifted the Nodachi to one side and began walking forward. But I must admit, I like the feeling the lighting brings to the room. It really fits the theme of, I'm about to turn you into a pincushion. Go ahead and try. Ryujin Jaka roared before blitzing forward. Sasori did so and wave after wave of weapon shot forward, but all of them turned to nothing a few centimeters from the clone. Sasori was shocked by this but soon added chakra cannons emerging from the ceiling and walls to the onslaught and cursed when they too faded from existence once they reached a certain distance from the clone. What the hell? Sasori screamed as chakra threads shot from his fingertips and he sent puppet after puppet towards the clone. Die, die, die! Sasori screamed in a panic as he resorted to throwing the tables around the workshop eventually at the clone who charged through them, ash rapidly building up around them as everything around him was turned to nothingness. Even the floor he walked on turned to ash as he ran. Hey Nico? The clone called out and the ash around the room all flowed to the blade and it glowed before bursting into flames and fusing to the blade and cracking as more is piled on and with a though it all compacted to being barely a millimeter thick, giving Zanka no Tachi a look of magma flowing beneath cracked plates of obsidian. This ends now, Ryujin Jaka shouted as with the last bits of his chakra, he performed a shunsin to appear right in front of Sasori and the blade cleaved him in half. Am I being defeated? Sasori's final thoughts were those as he seemed to remember his life in his last few moments. Was I wrong, doing what I did? Was it even worth it, knowing immortality was and will always be a fool's dream? I always just wanted friends but no one liked me. I was the orphan that rose to be great but still no one ever cared. Maybe things could have been different if I had stayed in the village. Maybe, every tea. The blade of Zanka no Tachi did what it was born to do. Turn everything in the universe to nothingness. Not to burn. Not to incinerate. What it cut no longer existed. Not even ash would remain. The workshop around the two broke down and a normal Zanpakuto replaced the Nodachi moments after Sasori was gone from existence. The flames formerly caging the two exploded outwards. The great power of Ryujin Jaka roaming wild for a moment before flickering and dying in moments with its source of power gone. Did he win? A voice asked as the clone stumbled out of the smoke. Yeah, I beat the brat. With those his last words the clone dispelled, all of its chakra gone and its memories returning to the original Naruto who stood with his force of a few dozen clones around the battlefield, holding the perimeter and keeping Sasori's many puppets from entering or leaving the village. Naruto sealed his sword moments later and with a thought all of his clones dispelled, all of their memories returning to him. Even though he used such a technique thousands of times before he was never fully ready for the onslaught of memories he would always receive. In the end each clone was a person with their own thoughts and all of them bombarding his mind gave him a headache for a split second before he brought it under control and rolled his shoulders as he sheathed his sword at his side. I've got to go talk to Gaara. With that Naruto vanished in a shunsin lacking the normal added feature of smoke of elements and appeared at the Kazekage Tower's balcony. Yo Gaara, we need to talk now. Naruto shouted as he pushed open the doors and thought of what he would say to the Kage. He had to word what he said carefully or he would be running through an entire desert, with a pissed-off redhead able to manipulate it. Gaara never did take damage to his village remotely well, and from the memories he received the repairs were going to take a chunk out of the village's funds. Why did they have to use those Zanpakuto? Why not something like Actually, when I think about all of my Zanpakuto are pretty destructive. Naruto! The infuriated voice of the Kazekage suddenly yelled and said Uzumaki paled. Damn it, Taka, you could have waited to tell him, Naruto muttered as he leapt over the tendrils of sand and rushed into the office, dodging the sand most likely sent to crush him. Sometimes I think he's trying to kill me when he does that. Alright Gaara, I'm sorry. Please don't kill me. Apologies don't cut it, Naruto. You'll be repairing the damage you've done to the village walls. Okay. Just put me down. Kankuro dreaded entering the Kazekage office but figured the information he could learn inside could be worth it. Maybe. It was with great resignation, almost of a man going to his death, that he opened the door. The scene Kankuro walked into was chaos. Taka was standing by the door and well away from the irate Gaara, who was holding Naruto up and was trying to throttle the life out of him with said Uzumaki trapped in a packed sphere of sand. Gaara was stronger than most people gave him credit for. What he was lifting was at least 4, maybe 500 pounds of sand and Uzumaki. Please Gaara, don't kill me. I have a wife. No you don't, you're not even dating anyone. I might start after this and… Wait second, how the hell do you even know about my personal life? How long has Naruto been in that sphere of sand? Kankuro asked Taka, who checked the clock on the wall. Around 12 minutes, give or take. Taka answered as he pushed himself off the wall. He said get him out in 15. He pressed his hand to a shadow on the wall and his gloved hand seemed to sink into it before dragging out a blade of shadows. Taka walked up to the trapped Naruto and cut him out of the sand, holding him after Naruto agreed to repair the damage down to Suna's defenses. So besides my brother trying to kill you, what do you have to report, Naruto? Kankuro asked the Uzumaki after a few moments of silence passed in the office. The Akatsuki is a bigger threat than I thought. One of my clones dealt with one of its newer members, Sasori of the Red Sand. The clone won in the end, but only after going Bankai with one of my stronger Zanpakuto, and I'm still not so sure that Sasori is dead. I already have clones looking over the site, and if you would allow me, could I examine his puppets and see a sample of the poison used by them as well? Akatsuki is most likely employing it for their foot soldiers to use. Naruto answered and Gaara stapled his hands together and leaned forward at his desk. Who are their foot soldiers? Gaara asked. I've thought they were simply a group of 9 extremely powerful shinobi. They've only recently brought this in and so far I've encountered Taki and Aimnin. I've had to move the Nanabai's Jinchuriki away from the village and to a village that owes me a few favors from problems I solved a few years ago. Naruto answered and Gaara cursed. But I doubt she'll be safe there for long. Akatsuki has begun conflicts between and in lands before, and they've probably nearly finished the planning for something big in the place where I have her stashed. What of the bloodline war in Kiri? Were they behind it as well? Gaara asked, dreading the answer. I don't know if it was by choice or manipulation, but the Mizukage is under control by the Akatsuki, and they were backing his army. I've assisted the rebels from time to time and heard they finally won maybe 9 or 10 months ago. I defeated the Mizukage and Sanbai Jinchuriki Yagura a few weeks before I left and helped them seal off his chakra. It was around 18 months ago, so I wasn't as strong as I am now. Naruto answered after a moment of thought and Kankuro cursed. That spy network I set up is borderline worthless half the time. How can you being one person know thing my spy network doesn't even know happened? Kankuro asked Naruto and he simply pointed to Taka. Ask him, he's my spy network. The entire thing. Naruto answered and Kankuro sighed. That doesn't help at all, Naruto. It really is more embarrassing than anything. Kankuro told Naruto, who grinned. It was supposed to embarrass you. Naruto answered as Kankuro seemed to gain an aura of depression around him. Let's get back to business. What does your agent Taka know? Gaara spoke up and Naruto looked towards Taka, who took a step forward. I've tracked the Akatsuki's movements and have a rough idea of what they do and how they do it. They work in 2-man teams and those I know of are Itachi Uchiha and Kisame Hashigaki, one of the most effective teams as most don't have teamwork or can even tolerate each other, and they've been assigned to capture the Kyuubi. They have attempted 3 times and failed all 3 times. Taka answered and Gaara cursed under his breath as he began writing something. What about their abilities? Kankuro asked and Taka thought for a moment before beginning to speak again. Itachi Uchiha is the support member of the team, complementing the brute force style of his partner Kisame Hashigaki with either mid to long-range ninjutsu, ANBU style close quarters taijutsu, or suppressive genjutsu. Kisame Hashigaki has one of the largest chakra reserves in recorded history and has been called the tailed beast without a tail, and makes use of the 7 swordsman blade named Samahata to great effect in combat, and has a large number of water-release ninjutsu, and from my own personal experience, he possessed massive amount of strength, endurance, and exceptional prowess in taijutsu. Do you have intel on another team? I've heard it's a large group in strength but not in numbers. Gaara asked and Taka immediately responded. Another team I know of is Kakuzu of Takigakure and Haiden of Yugakure, and I've heard they are called the Zombie Duo because of their respective techniques. Kakuzu possesses a technique named Earth Grudge Fear, allowing him to have a maximum of 5 hearts, and my most recent information lists him having all 5 chakra natures by it, and he may have several Kekai Genkai. He is also Akatsuki's banker and manages their money. He is primarily a bounty hunter, and due to his partner, he rarely brings in a bounty live. Taka answered before tossing a scroll to Kankuro, who slid it into a pouch on his leg. That contains information on their current funds, but it changes constantly, so I don't know how reliable it is. Taka told the puppeteer, who nodded and reminded himself to look it over tonight. What else can you tell us? What about his partner? Kankuro asked, and Taka sighed and hesitated before speaking again. His partner, Haiden, in the barest statement I have come up with, is a psychopath who is also immortal. He follows a religion named Jashin, a cult which believes in mindless slaughter, and his devotion to it has allowed him access to a technique that has made him immortal. The technique doesn't use chakra but uses a ritual to power itself, and the ritual demands that he ingest the blood of his victims and paint the symbol of Jashin in blood at his feet. Once he steps into the symbol, then wounds inflicted on himself transfer to his victim and vice versa, but due to his immortality he is unaffected by it. Those two sound terrifying, Gaara commented, and Taka simply nodded. They are. Kakuzu repertoire of techniques either matches of exceeds that of the likes of Hiruzen Sarutobi multiplied over several villages. He is a master of ninjutsu and proficient in taijutsu and is comparable in strength to Hoshigaki. Haiden himself is dangerous with a specially made triple blade scythe, made to collect blood instead of wound severely. He has capability to use it as a weapon at any range due to swordsmanship skills and a cable attached to the weapon. He also carries a retractable spear he commonly uses to finish off his victims. Anything else about we should know about that bastard? Kankuro asked as he was writing down everything Taka said. Do you have anything else on Kakuzu? Very little besides their abilities. To gather that information I was nearly killed. Clones and mercenaries can only do so much before I most involve myself in gathering the information. Understandable, it is always best to see things yourself. Written information can be misinterpreted, and that misinterpretation can prove fatal for not just yourself but everyone under your command or relying on you in the shinobi world. Gaara spoke up in agreement as Naruto nodded along with him. Besides those 4 and the 2 defeated today, we have information on Akatsuki's spy, a creature known as Zetsu that is part plant, allowing it to enter restricted areas by traveling through the ground. A seal array Uzumaki-san has created will keep him out. Other than that, I know very little of the remaining 2 members. I thought there were 10 members. Gaara spoke up and Naruto nodded. Used to be, but that bastard Orochimaru stole his ring when he fled the organization. Naruto answered. Why, you would think he would feel right at home with them? Kankuro asked and Naruto smirked. I don't know for sure, but it involved him trying to steal the Sharingan from Itachi Uchiha when he joined, and Itachi took one of his hands as payment for the attempt. Naruto answered and both Gaara and Kankuro grinned. Serves the bastard right for what he tried to do to Suna. Kankuro told the 2 shinobi. I hope he suffered. With it being Orochimaru we are talking about, it is highly likely he suffered for some time. He always takes large risks for large payoffs, or in this case a great punishment. Taka told Kankuro before drawing a scroll out of a pouch at his back and tossed it to Gaara. What is this? The Kazekage asked as a tendril of sand shot out of his open gourd and snatched the scroll out the air half a meter from Gaara. A scroll linked to several others. With it we can transfer information easier. Naruto spoke up as he pulled out an identical one. I made them for Jinchuriki so we can stick together, and for the Kage and leaders of the villages that I know are targets for Akatsuki. That actually brings up another point for me. I believe Sunagakure and the Land of Wind as a whole is under threat from the Akatsuki for reasons beyond you being a Jinchuriki Kazekage-sama. Taka spoke up as he stepped forward and laid 3 scrolls down on Gaara's desk. How so? I would think the danger has been averted for now with the defeat of 2 of their members, but you are telling me there is more on the way from the Akatsuki even when they've already been defeated here, correct? Gaara asked, completely serious at the continued threat Akatsuki was to his village. I'm afraid so, and the main reason is that the Land of Wind is the perfect staging grounds for an invasion to the Land of Fire, and Kanehagakure itself to retrieve the Kyuubi sealed into Uzumaki-san and destroy a village Akatsuki has deemed a nuisance. Taka spoke up as Gaara only sighed as he rubbed his temple. It would seem this generation has inherited the problems of the previous ones. Gaara commented as all those in the room could only nod in agreement at such words. Gaara, do you think we should inform the council about this? Kankuro asked, and Gaara shook his head. The council is annoying to me, inform only Baki. He being in charge of the village's military in my stead needs to know what to plan for. Also, when Temari returns, inform her. She must know of the possible problems relating to the Chunin exams. We may need battle-ready Chunin fresh out of the exams, so inform her that she will be working with several veteran Jonin to assist in creating the exams. Gaara spoke up after a few moments of thought. And I will have a long rest once this meeting is over with. I am sure that I have not fully recovered from my battle with Deidara. Speaking of Deidara, where is the Mad Bomber? Naruto asked, and Gaara simply laid his head down and pointed to the floor. A report a few minutes ago spoke of him screaming about art being an explosion or something. I told the guards to gag all of his mouths. Gaara answered with a tired sigh. If that doesn't work, I'll have him drugged and send him to Konoha with you for interrogation. I can get what you need. Naruto spoke up, and Gaara pointed towards Kankuro. He's in charge of that department as well. Gaara told the Uzumaki, and Kankuro simply walked out the room, making a gesture to follow him. Naruto waved off Taka as he fell in step behind him, and the masked agent immediately stopped, and Naruto turned to him. I need you to find out who Akatsuki is making their next target. I have it on good word that the Nibi Jinchuriki is training with the Gyuki Jinchuriki in a location guarded by the Reikage, so I know those two are out for naught, but there's still 4 targets for those bastards. Think you can find out who's next? Naruto asked, and Taka chuckled a bit as he nodded. You wound me believing I can't. Taka answered before the shadows around the room seemed to crawl towards him. I can get it done if you just give me time. The shadows surged towards him and wrapped around him as a cocoon almost before it all collapsed and Taka was gone. That is always weird, Kankuro muttered. Leave my office. I want to go to sleep, Gaara ordered as he waved his hand, and his sand moved down the blinds in his office and threw the two out. Literally. Gaara's a jerk sometimes, Naruto muttered as he pulled Kankuro to his feet. Hey, give my little brother a break. He's been up the past few days working non-stop. He needs some sleep, Kankuro told the Uzumaki as the two walked down to the holding cells. They found the 8 annoyed Jonin assigned to watch Deidara either plugging their ears or banging their heads on the wall. What's wrong with you guys? Naruto asked a pair playing shogi. He won't shut up. A Jonin banging his head on the wall spoke up with each word accented by another bang against the wall after it. He's been talking or making some stupid noise for almost an entire hour by now. I thought you gagged him through? Kankuro asked. And there's nothing in that cell either. The sound of something hitting the wall followed. He still has that stupid clay, he made it into a ball or something and he keeps throwing it at the wall. Another Jonin spoke up as she unplugged her ears and noticed Kankuro about to go on a rant on taking away weapons and supplies from prisoners when they spoke up first as she pointed to the cell. Those bags have seals on them keeping them stuck on him, so we couldn't take them off. What about interrogation? Where's that at? Kankuro asked as Naruto walked away. He won't tell us anything. We've tried a dozen different jinjutsu and we've even tried beating him, but nothing works with that guy. We had some medical nin come in and heal him afterwards so he wouldn't die from his wounds. A third Jonin answered as Naruto threw Deidara against the clear glass wall. You're not very good at this. A fight won't make me talk. Deidara called out to Naruto, who slammed his head back into the glass with his foot. Collapse, Sakanade, Naruto whispered as he drew his Zanpakuto and twirled it in his hands. The Zanpakuto became a normal katana with a red hilt with the guard shaped like an hourglass and a large circle, with a diameter of at least 15 centimeters, appeared from the pommel with the first few inches of the blade covered by an extension of the crossguard. The blade was straight and slim with the tip ending in a slanted razor-like edge instead of being tapered at a point along with 5 holes along the sword's length. Naruto spun the sword by the circle and a pink mist filled the cell in moments, the source of it being the sword. Can you feel it? Your world shattering around you before it rebuilds just to shatter again? Naruto asked as Deidara began stumbling around, but seemed to have forgotten how to walk as he collapsed to the ground, his hands shooting out the opposite way to stop himself from hitting the ground. I control your world now, Deidara, and it's in your best interest to tell me all you know about Akatsuki. Go to hell! The former IWNine snapped only to be bombarded by a burning pain. That is the sun growing hotter? It's burning, isn't it? Naruto asked, his voice seemingly all around Deidara but no source. What the hell are you doing to me? Deidara demanded as he curled into a ball. What the he? His words were cut off as he screamed again, feeling as if his entire body had been flash frozen. That is the wind growing colder and colder, freezing your blood. Naruto's voice spoke up as Deidara shivered uncontrollably. If you want, I can heat things up. Before Deidara could say anything, he was seemingly engulfed in flames. Deidara screamed as he rolled on the ground in agony. Please, I'll tell you everything. Deidara finally screamed, and Naruto's smirking face as visible in the sky of whatever hell Deidara found himself trapped in. Please, just stop it. Oh, you will. You'll tell me anything I want to know. Believe me. Deidara felt himself consumed by darkness and only screamed louder as the void around him grew and grew, leaving him in nothing but the dark. 3 days after the Akatsuki attack on Suna. So, Naruto, what information do you have from your interrogation of the Akatsuki member Deidara of IWA? The 5th Hokage Tsunade Senju asked the blonde shinobi Naruto Uzumaki, who looked up from the scroll he was looking over, and he slid it into his pocket. Purple cat-like eyes locked with her brown ones. I gained little information from him, just the name of his partner, Sasori of the Red Sand, and that was already previously known. He knew nothing of importance, and once I saw so I had Taka place him in a comatose state, I figured I could use him as a bargaining chip in the future. Naruto spoke up, and Tsunade rose an eyebrow at his last statement. He's not telling me everything. I'll have to ask Gaara later what he made Naruto promise not to tell me. Tsunade thought before wording her next sentence carefully. I'm afraid I'm going to have to order you to deliver him to the T&I department. And Naruto, please see sense, because I do not doubt your skills as an interrogator, but I sincerely believe Deidara knows more than he told you. Tsunade spoke after a moment, and Naruto was skeptical and his face showed it, but he simply shrugged and raised a hand after a moment. Taka walked out the shadows along the walls, and Tsunade immediately threw several kunai towards him. Taka waved his hand, and the kunai stopped in midair as he walked over to Naruto and handed him a scroll. The bodies are in that scroll. Don't release it until you're somewhere private. Taka whispered into Naruto's ear as he walked past him. He turned to face Tsunade, who eyed him warily. Naruto, who is he? Tsunade asked as she signaled the ANBU hidden in the room to remain in position. He's my agent, codenamed Taka. Naruto answered as he rubbed his temple. But enough about that. Didn't you tell me you had a mission for me? Tsunade had the decency to look embarrassed at this. A mission was the original reason she called him to her office, but she had drifted off topic when she learned he had interrogated Deidara in Sunagakure. Ah, yes. I need Team Kakashi and Team Kurenai to intercept a shipment of weapons from the notorious weapons dealer named Bando. The Land of Spring has hired Konoha for this mission since it's coming through the Land of Fire, and their chakra armor was stolen by Bando's still unidentified agent. We believe they will be traveling with the shipment, so take extreme caution and avoid unnecessary risks. I've already sent an ANBU team in advance and lost contact with them. Your secondary objective to the mission is to figure out what happened to them. Tsunade told Naruto, who simply nodded. Anything else I should know, or can I leave? Naruto asked, and Tsunade thought for a moment before handing him a scroll. Jiraiya said to give you this when you returned. He said it was from that thing you did, and that you'll know what to do with it. Tsunade spoke up, and Naruto grinned as he tossed the scroll to Taka. How many does that make? Naruto asked the spy, and he seemed to think for a moment before responding. 37. Taka answered, and he slipped the scroll into a satchel Tsunade just noticed he had. How the hell did he keep that hidden? Tsuanda thought, but ignored it, for now at least. You're going to need to be at the gate in 3 hours. Do whatever you want, just be there. Tsunade told Naruto, who nodded. I just have one question. Can I ask it? Naruto asked, and Tsunade nodded. Would it be alright if I brought Taka along? This seems just like the type of mission he excels in. I'll need information on him, like what he looks like and past allegiances. Tsunade answered, and Naruto nodded to Taka, who walked up to the desk, and Naruto quickly drew his Zanpakuto. Shatter. Kyoka Suigetsu. Naruto whispered, and his blade transformed into one with a green hilt wrapping and a hexagonal guard, 2 sides being longer than the others on either side and giving it the appearance of a rectangle almost if you ignored the additional side at both ends. No one seemed to notice the release, and Naruto grinned as Tsunade examined a brown-haired and black-eyed Taka. I've seen that face. He's officially been a mercenary all of his life. He never entered the academy in his village. Impressive, really. Tsunade commented before waving Taka away. He may accompany, but if he endangers the mission, I expect for you to deal with him appropriately. Of course. Naruto answered before he nodded to Taka, and the masked shinobi vanished. Naruto sheathed his Zanpakuto and nodded to Tsunade before leaving the room in a shunsin. So Kakashi-sensei, do you know anything about Naruto? The Jonin's pink-haired student asked him as the two walked down one of the streets of Konoha. He seems so different ever since he came back after his trip with Jiraiya. The silver-haired Jonin sighed as he closed a book he was reading. It was all the information the village had on Bando, and it wasn't much. We didn't see him for 5 years, Sakura. People change in that time. Just look at yourself as an example. You blossomed under Hokage-san's teachings and have become a great medical nin, and your taijutsu has grown by leaps and bounds ever since you began training with Madogai and Rock Lee. Kakashi answered as he ran a hand through his silver hair. But I'll agree with you on Naruto. He's definitely changed since he's been back. Not to mention he's grown incredibly strong. He was an event trying against me during the test, and he nearly killed me, and I know he has more to him than just that. Kakashi thought as he remembered the completely one-sided fight, if you could even call it that, he had against Naruto. But how much is the question? A voice spoke up from behind them, and both shinobi turned to see the purple cat-like eyes of Naruto Uzumaki staring at them. In the few minutes he had been gone from the Hokage office, he had changed out of his outfit and was now wearing a pair of black pants along with a red long-sleeve shirt, but he still kept his sword with him, it on his back instead of at his waist. Naruto, have you heard we have a mission? Kakashi immediately asked, and the Uzumaki nodded. I was actually looking for you. I have some information on Bando I would like to discuss with you too, since we are a team. Naruto spoke, a grin on his face, and Sakura smiled. Naruto hasn't changed that much. He's still the same him out of a fight. Sakura thought as she nodded. We can meet up in a few minutes. I need to finish a few errands. By Kakashi-sensei, Naruto. Sakura spoke up before using a shunsin with cherry blossom petals swirling around her. That smile. Kakashi walked up to Naruto and shook his hands before Naruto pulled him into a hug. Sorry about having to kick your ass, Kakashi-sensei, but Team Kakashi was riding on the line. I wasn't pulling any punches. Naruto told him, his smile wider, and Kakashi waved it off. No problem. I would have tried to kill you too if my team was at stake. Kakashi answered. It's fake. Naruto suddenly pushed Kakashi to the ground and drew his Zanpakuto. Scatter, Senbon Sakura. Naruto called out as the blade dissolved into a multitude of multiplying petals. They surged forward and skewered a pack of ink lions lunging at the two from the rooftops. Just like mine. Do you see him? Naruto asked even as Kakashi flung several shuriken to take down a flock of explosive tag-bearing birds. They're made out of ink? Kakashi asked even as he scanned the rooftops before he flung several kunai towards a figure calmly sitting on one. Another wave of lions intercepted them before 3 tigers lunged forward and bounded down the rooftops. The animals rushed towards the 2 shinobi with the few tigers surrounded by the many lions. Turn all creation to ash. Ryujin Jaka. Naruto suddenly roared, and Kakashi's instinct screaming at him to roll was the only thing that saved him from death by cremation. A wave of flames rushed forward and consumed the ink lions and tigers and rushed towards the figure on the rooftop only for them to vanish in a burst of smoke. Who the hell was that? Naruto asked as the flames rushed back towards his reforming sword. I saw a Konoha forehead protector, but that was it. Nothing else. I have no idea, but I have a feeling Hokage-san will know. Kakashi answered back before both leaped to the rooftops. A figure stood in an alley nearby and watched the two leave. I guess it worked, as you said it would. Taka spoke up to seemingly no one before Naruto seemed to phase into existence next to him. Of course it would, Taka. I assured you that no one would see the difference, and no one did. It seems like Kabuto's dead soul technique did come in handy in the end. Naruto commented as he saw the reanimated corpse follow after Kakashi, a portion of his chakra placed in it after it was finished. That technique truly is useful. It's a shame Kabuto wouldn't give it up without a fight. Shall I have more prepared then? Even with the enhancements I've given them, they won't last long in serious combat. Taka spoke up and Naruto nodded. Jiraiya turned out to be useful after all. He's given us plenty of bodies. 37, right? Naruto asked Taka, who nodded. Yes, that scroll also contained additional equipment and information on the technique. Taka answered and Naruto grinned. Remind me to thank you for placing that seal on him. He believes he acts out of his own free will even when he's following my instructions perfectly. Naruto commented as Taka simply gave a small bow. The challenge the task prevented was a good enough thanks. Jiraiya fought valiantly against me, but in the end he fell like you knew he would. The moment you appeared he had lost. Taka told Naruto, who grinned at the memory. It was an incredible fight, and the benefits I've managed to gain from my control over him has made it all more than worth it. Naruto answered back before both turned away and Taka waved his hand, the shadows opening for them almost like a door would. But I still have work to do before everything is ready. Still so much to do. I am here to assist you the entire way, Naruto-san. 3 hours after Naruto exited the Hokage Tower, location: Northern Gate of Konoha. So, is everyone ready? Kakashi asked as he adjusted his backpack. Once we start moving, we won't stop until we intercept the convoy. I checked my team before we arrived. They're ready. Kurenai answered with a quick nod from her now Chunin team. I had Taka look through everything. Us two are set. Naruto spoke up for him and Sakura. I'm afraid we can't leave yet then. We're missing the replacement for our missing team member. Kakashi spoke up before a figure appeared in a shunshin in front of them. This is going to be annoying, but Hokage-sama ordered me to come with you. Shikamaru spoke up as he gave a half-hearted wave once the smoke cleared. Said something about analyzing the enemy techniques and tactics to better build a counter-strategy if we encounter them again. After interrupting my nap and having me pore over shinobi records for a few hours, that was a real drag. He's a genius? Taka asked Naruto, who nodded, and Shikamaru turned to them and barely glanced at the grinning Naruto before his eyes locked on Taka. What the hell happened to Naruto? The lazy Nara thought, as with his brief glance he had seen an entirely different Naruto. Even factoring in his extending training for a few years, he shouldn't be such a different person. His body language is off and his expression is definitely forced. All in all, I would say this is an entire different Naruto than the blonde loudmouth I knew 5 years ago. Who's he? Shikamaru asked after a one-sided staring contest on his part. He couldn't even see Taka's eyes from inside the mask he wore. He's my agent. Picked him up while I was training. Naruto answered and Shikamaru turned away. What a drag. I'll have to readjust all of my strategies now. I didn't know you had someone else with you. Shikamaru commented as he began walking away. His thoughts very much different from what he said. His facial muscles are too rigid and unnatural instead of fluid and flowing like a normal face would when someone talks. It's as if it's an effort to speak. That kid is really nothing but trouble sometimes. Why does he have to always add more pieces to the puzzle literally every time I see him? A little known fact about the Cloud Watcher was that he kept a mental puzzle of everyone he knew. It was actually easy considering he was usually expected to pore over dozens of scrolls filled of information he was expected to remember flawlessly every night, but back to the point. He used the puzzles he would make to help his planning, knowing how they fit on the grand scheme of things by knowing how they would react in any given situation and what it would lead to. It made him a pretty good team leader actually, being able to come up with hundreds of strategies after knowing someone for a few days or a week. The 8 Konohinin with Taka following after Naruto sprinted out of the gates before leaping into the trees surrounding the village. They went forward at full speed, each team falling into a formation with the Jonin in front, the 2 Chunin assigned to combat on either side of them and the Chunin assigned recon was between the two of them. So Kakashi led his team with Naruto on his left and Sakura on his right, with Shikamaru using sensory skills. Asuma ordered him to learn to look for anything out of the ordinary, with Kurenai leading her team next to Kakashi with Kiba and Hinata on her left and right respectively, with Shino sending out insects laced with his chakra forward, quietly forming a sensory web as they flew with the group. What do you think we're up against? Kakashi asked Kurenai after a few minutes of traveling in silence. I expect high Jonin level opponents, so I'll work on layering the battlefield in some of my higher level genjutsu and we'll go from there. I won't send Chunin to attempt to take them down, and if bandos there will have no choice but to retreat and hope for reinforcements from Hokage-sama. Kurenai answered instantly, having thought up several plans in advance the night before and this morning before telling the Kapinin the most likely one she expected to use. Considering this is chakra armor no country has touched, I'm sure Bando will be with it. I'm afraid of that. When I was in ANBU, I heard of Bando from my ANBU captain at the time. He was sent on a mission to recover a powerful weapon Bando had stolen, but he died on the mission. He was nothing but a bloody pulp when recovery squads found him and we figured Bando did it. Kakashi answered, his hands balling into fists at the memory of his deceased captain. I don't like my chances against someone like him, but I'm willing to attempt to take him down. What do you plan to do with your team? Kurenai asked. If they see you charge in, they will follow you. What Kakashi was going to say was lost as a shout from Naruto as he turned to Taka interrupted them. Taka, move ahead and run interference on the convoy, Naruto ordered and Taka nodded. Of course, Naruto-sama, they won't move much further. Taka answered before he waved his hand and a few dozen clones burst into existence in several clouds of smoke as he disappeared through the shadows of the forest. What was that? Shikamaru asked as every shinobi turned to Naruto, who shrugged. Why else would I only have Taka? He can do things like that, Naruto answered before rushing forward with the rest of the Konoha shinobi. Taka landed in front of the Bando's convoy and it stopped instantly, it sinking into the ground as Taka waved a hand at it. I can't allow you to pass. It'll be in your best interest to remain where you are. Taka spoke. Who do you think you are? A shinobi under Bando's employ demanded only for a blast of fire to incinerate them moments later. My name is not important to people who will soon be dead, Taka answered before rushing forward. Impossible to be seen as flames encircled their fist, soon followed by lightning in the other. Naruto, once we get there I want you and Kiba to be with me on point while Hinata, Shikamaru, and Shino are on Kurenai's and Sakura's defense. Hinata, if one of us gets injured you'll fill in while Shino moves them out, and once Kurenai finishes her genjutsu I want both you and Shino in while Shikamaru stays with Sakura, helping her heal anyone who gets injured without having to deal with enemy ambushes. Kakashi quickly told the teams as they neared the location of the convoy. Follow any directions either I or Kurenai give without hesitation. Kakashi's words died off as they came to the convoy. It was floating in the air just before the forest canopy as Naruto's agent, Taka, held two of the shinobi Bando used up by their necks while the rest of them laid in either pieces or were just bloody smears across the ground. Limbs and organs littered all across the road while ashes blew away in the breeze. You two hold some type of position from the way you carry yourself. You walk with a type of confidence unique to certain people when you were with the other men, and it made you easy targets. You are either veterans under Bando's employ and therefore most know something, or you are in a leadership position here. Taka told both, his tone emotionless and seemingly oblivious to the carnage around him. You can either tell me and I let you go, not harmed anymore, or you may withhold information from me and I will be forced to cause you both such pain you have never experienced before in your life. So, which shall it be? What do you want to know? The one held in his left hand spoke up. Bando gave me information on all the shipments for all of his weapons. Good, Taka answered as he looked towards the other shinobi held in his right hand. Will you tell me anything? Go to hell with that traitor, the other snapped as he spit on Taka's mask. Fool, Taka answered as his shadow seemed to extend before four of his clones emerged from the shadows. He handed the two shinobi over without a word, and they both panicked as they were dragged into the shadows by two shadow clones each. Man, this just keeps getting more and more troublesome, Shikamaru thought with a sigh. This Taka guy demolished the 15 mid-jonin guards working this convoy, so Bando's going to get more on the others once he hears about this, or he may protect them himself. Spread out and get anything you can from the remains. Seal what you can so we can examine it back at the village, Kakashi ordered as he left with Kurenai to discuss what happened. Taka had vanished once the group arrived and reappeared where the real Naruto was overlooking his corpse double, acting like his past self. Taka, can I ask you a question? Naruto asked his nearly always present agent. Of course, Naruto-san, what is it? Taka answered, and Naruto sighed as he looked down at the Konoha shinobi. When I see that corpse down there, looking like me and acting like I used to, I feel angry and disappointed at myself, Naruto spoke after a moment. How? Taka answered. I'm angry because, just look at that moron. Naruto nearly screamed but kept his voice lowered. It wouldn't have mattered through as he was under Kyoka Suigetsu's cloak of illusion. He doesn't know what it means to be a shinobi. He didn't even know what he was really asking for when he kept screaming he wanted to be Hokage. Children never know the full scope of things. Those who are not always wish for them to retain their innocence just a little longer before they are exposed to the cruelness of our world. Taka answered. You were a child then, but you have grown and now know what was forbidden from you. Now why are you annoyed at yourself? Naruto was silent for nearly a minute before he finally spoke up. His words spoken with sorrow. I miss that. I miss seeing the goodness in all people, my allied and my enemies. I miss thinking that everyone could be saved no matter what. When you're able to see the darkness in everyone, all of their negative thought and feelings, it drives you to become dark yourself. Trying to counter it all but failing. I miss being like that, and I'm annoyed at myself for losing something like it. Something I never even took notice of and appreciated when I had the chance. In the world of shinobi, people change as they become more and more rooted in our world. That is why so very few every of us can return to their old and unchanging civilian life. Taka answered, his tone somber. To change is natural. It was bound to happen with what you have endured these past years. Thank you, Taka. It was no problem. I am here to assist you, Naruto-san. Thank you again anyway. Alright, since we have information on 5 more convoys, we'll break apart into 2 men squads, and I'll take on the 5th by myself. Kakashi spoke up only for Naruto to step forward with a grin. I can take a go at the 5th one, Kakashi-sensei. I've been dying to test out some new jutsus Ero-sensei taught me. Naruto told him, and Kakashi made the mistake of believing him. Alright, I'll go with Shikamaru. Sakura heads out with Shino, Kurenai with Kiba, and Hinata with. Kakashi trailed off as Naruto only grinned as he made a familiar cross-hand sign. Shadow Clone Jutsu, Naruto announced, and the moment the clone appeared, Taka slapped a tag on their forehead, it flaring briefly with the dark blue light of chakra before sinking into the clone's forehead. What was that? Kakashi asked as he instinctively reached for a kunai. You didn't become a jonin by ignoring things like that, and he saw Kurenai already molding chakra for a fire jutsu, simply waiting for Taka to move before incinerating him. It's just a durability and chakra recycler seal matrix I invented with Ero-sensei. It helps making clones more durable without having to give them massive amounts of chakra. Naruto hurriedly answered, trying to defuse the situation before it got to the point of violence before his face broke into a grin. Geez, why does everybody seem so violent ever since I came back? Did you all really miss my sheer awesomeness that much? Sorry about that. Taka is still an unknown, so we're all a little jumpy when he is involved in things like this. Kurenai answered as Kakashi walked over to them. Thanks for the clone, but what is Taka going to do? Kakashi asked as he pointed to the masked shinobi only to find him gone. Where is he? He went to stall all of the convoys. He'll block the road to stop them. Naruto answered before he gave a wave. See ya. He vanished with a long-distance shunsin and an added swirl, more like a miniature vortex, of leaves blinded the Konoha shinobi. Naruto still doesn't have that great of control. He overloaded that shunsin with chakra. Shikamaru commented before he and Kakashi both vanished in a burst of smoke. Naruto watched hidden from the treetops as the Konohinin vanished in bursts of smoke. Taka, how long will the convoys be stalled? Naruto asked. A few hours. I've created walls in a complete circle around them. Taka answered. I've reinforced the walls with chakra and lined them with dozens of traps, as well to keep them away from the walls. Good. Head on to your next assignment while I go deal with the one I've been assigned. Naruto spoke up before receiving a nod from Taka. I will infiltrate a mechagear and give you my report once I get inside. Taka answered, but Naruto stopped him as he turned away with a hand on his shoulder. Remember to time your approach. The rain is a sensory barrier, and I hear the entirety of the Akatsuki are meeting in person there along the time of your infiltration. Be careful, but if you can do it, I want a report on their meeting. Naruto spoke up and Taka nodded. I'll return in a week at the most. Taka answered before stepping into the shadows and seemingly dropping into them, as if they were water. Good luck, Naruto spoke. Don't need it. Taka's voice answered before the shadows seemed to change back to normal. Well, time to go to work, I guess. Naruto commented before vanishing in a shunsin. I'll have to work fast to intercept the corpse before it reaches the convoy. With Shikamaru and Kakashi. Hataki-san, have you noticed something different with Naruto ever since he came back? Shikamaru asked the veteran jonin, who simply nodded. He's been off, but it's understandably. He's been away for 5 years, so it'll take some time to get used to how he changed. Kakashi answered, and since he was looking forward, he wasn't able to see the eyes of the genius behind him narrow in annoyance. Believe me, I'm not trying to insult you, Kakashi, but you're an idiot sometimes, even when all the clues are in front of you. Shikamaru spoke, and without another word he shot past the jonin. This is troublesome. Am I really the only one who knows Naruto isn't Naruto anymore? Sakura and Shino. Haruno-san, have you noticed Uzumaki-san has changed ever since he had returned from his training with Jiraiya Dano? Shino asked the Hokage's apprentice, who hesitated for a second before nodding. As a medic, Tsunade-sensei trained me in attention to detail, and I've noticed that Naruto is very different from what he was before he left. Just the way he carries himself is different. It's like he's a completely different person than who he was. Sakura answered, and Shino nodded before he was silent for several moments before he decided to speak again. After Naruto left, I had several of my Kikeichu go to the Valley of the End and consume of the remnants of the chakra there, of both Naruto and Sasuke. When Naruto returned, my Kikeichu nearly didn't recognize him, and a hive has never come close to have forgotten any chakra signatures before. It is a fact that some Kikeichu among any hive will always remember it, but Naruto's signature was nearly forgotten, and I do not know why still. Shino revealed to Sakura after a moment of intense thought. You are correct when you say that Naruto is a different person, at least his chakra has changed drastically. I wonder how. I've studied the chakra pathway system and chakra extensively, and few books mentioned a way for chakra signatures to change, and the ones that did state it's a kenjutsu corrupting their chakra unless the person themselves undertakes a drastic change. I'll have to ask Jiraiya-sama when he returns. Sakura told him before turning to him. You can join me if you wish. I'm afraid I can't. Once we return to the village, my father has asked me to look after the hive. Shino answered, and Sakura rose an eyebrow at that. But you have a hive already. Why would your father want you to have another? Sakura asked, and Shino slowly shook his head. I am to look after the main hive. One of the duties of the clan head and the clan council is to ensure the main Kikeichu hive remains strong. It is partly why we have a relationship with the torture and interrogation force. We use their block chakra to keep the hive satisfied. I will begin my training with the techniques linked to the main hive, since I have completed my previous training for the endurance and reserves necessary to use those techniques. Shino explained to the dumbstruck Haruno. Would you need a medical nin with you? Sakura asked after a moment. I would. My chakra will nearly be drained entirely by the Kikeichu during my training. Shino answered. I'll be there if you allow me to study the hive or a sample of it. The Kikeichu your clan uses have always interested me ever since I began my studying in becoming a medical nin. Sakura spoke up, and Shino rose a concealed eyebrow. How? The bug user asked. Normally people are disturbed by our insects. Then they're morons. If the hospital could learn to temporary transplant specially bred Kikeichu into the patients, then we'll be able to create antidotes to some of the most deadly poisons Konoha have encountered. Not to mention the possibility of a single medical nin being able to send out Kikeichu-fed healing chakra to quickly heal dozens of shinobi or civilians without exposing themselves to the battlefield at all. Sakura answered, and Shino nodded. Those are good ideas, and perhaps they can become reality once I become clan head. Shino thought as the two raced towards the convoy. Kurenai and Kiba. Kurenai-sensei, do you know who that Taka guy that Naruto has working for him is? Kiba asked while riding the now horse-sized Akamaru. Konoha has no jurisdiction over him, and he has no records since he was never properly trained as a shinobi. Kurenai answered after a small moment of hesitation in speaking. No one has any idea who Taka is besides Naruto himself, and he's not telling anyone anything. I guess it makes sense. He wants an ace up his sleeve with the Akatsuki after him, and no one knowing how deep they are involved around the shinobi world. Kiba spoke after a moment, having become much more level-headed ever since he had been trained by his mother and sister relentlessly for a few years after Naruto left. They had heard about his rash actions during both the Chunin exams and during the Sasuke retrieval mission, and had pounded the brashness and cockiness out of him in a few months. We can all understand that, but this is Naruto we're talking about. I didn't even think he knew about Akatsuki. Kurenai answered after a moment, and Kiba stared at her, his face black. That's not right, Kurenai-sensei. Kiba spoke after a moment of silence passed between the two, the tension thick enough for anyone else to choke on. They want my friend dead, and I'll be damned if the village kept something like that from him. Naruto wouldn't know what to do with that information. He'll just shout about it and say he'll stop them. Kurenai answered, and Kiba didn't the unexpected thing by actually growling at her. So it's better to leave him unprepared, like a lamb heading to the slaughter? Kiba demanded as Akamaru stopped. Who the hell gets away with even ordering something like that? Kiba, it would be for the best, and he would even have an ANBU protection detail guarding him. Kurenai pressed, and Kiba actually laughed at that. And you think Naruto would leave people to die for him to be safe? Have you ever even met him? Naruto may joke around, but he doesn't let people around him get hurt. That only motivates him to get stronger to protect them. Kiba told Kurenai with conviction. I don't know why people always think that Naruto isn't ready to handle information you'll trust a genin with, but it's getting ridiculous. Naruto knows when to take things seriously. He doesn't joke around when things are dangerous like the Akatsuki. Let's go, Akamaru, Kiba ordered, and with a bark for confirmation the two were a blur as they leapt through the trees, leaving Kurenai behind who sighed. I have the feeling I just seriously screwed up, Kurenai thought even as she sped up to catch up with Kiba. She was still a Jonin while he was a Chunin and would deal with his attitude later. Right now they had a convoy of weapons to stop. Hinata and Naruto clone. So, Uzumaki-san, what were you doing during your training? Hinata managed to ask without a stutter. Help from Kurenai, Kiba, and Shino, getting rid of much of her shyness around others. Did you enjoy it? It was awesome, but it was really hard almost all of the time. I swear Jiraiya-sensei was trying to kill me sometimes with the training he put me through, and it got nearly impossible at some points, but it was all worth it. Naruto answered, one hand raised up to his face before it balled into a fist. I'm stronger than ever and I'm ready to stop the Akatsuki. They're not going to hurt any of the Jinchuriki as long as I can stop them. He always has such a conviction. I guess that was why I had that crush on him. Hinata thought as she kept pace with Naruto. But seeing him now, I don't feel like I did 5 years ago when I'm near him. A little-known fact around the village, and even the Konoha 11, was that Hinata Hyuga had slowly but surely had gotten over her crush over Naruto, and now just saw him as a best friend, someone to rely on and draw strength from. Naruto Uzumaki to her was now a source of inspiration and hope in the otherwise dark and painful shinobi world. That's great to hear. I've been training too ever since you left. Hinata answered after a moment. Everyone has grown stronger since you left. All of us want to help you against the Akatsuki. That's great, Naruto announced with a mile-wide grin on his face. Akatsuki doesn't stand a chance against the will of fire. They'll never bring down either us or Konoha. Yeah, they won't, Hinata added as the two raced towards the convoy. But is he still going to be alive to see it brought down? With Shikamaru and Kakashi. All right, we've reached the convoy, Kakashi spoke up. The two crouched in one of the trees nearby the route. Do you have any ideas on how to take it down? I've got a few dozen already, Shikamaru answered as he drew out a scroll. Just give me a few minutes and neither of us will have to lift a finger to bring this thing down. Go ahead, Kakashi spoke up after a moment of thought. If you need help, just ask. Don't worry. This is going to be easy to set up, Shikamaru answered. A few minutes later. So, any idea what we're even carrying? A Jonin ranked missing nin walking in front of the convoy asked. Some armor or something like that. All I care about is getting paid, and with those 20 chunin we've got covering us from the trees on top of the 10 Jonin on this route, this is one easy job that pays a fortune. A second Jonin nearby spoke up. I can already feel all that cash, just for guarding this stupid thing. You're all too loud. A voice spoke as a figure landed in front of the convoy. Don't you ever know when to shut up and walk? Oh shit, that's... A Jonin began. Kakashi Hatake, at your service. Kakashi finished as he began forming hand signs. Now, Shikamaru thought as he saw the Chunin panic but still leap out of cover, and he formed a single hand sign. First, the scrolls. Scrolls he strung out deeper in the forests activated, and kunai with explosive tags tied to them shot forward, collapsing the trees around them and forming a crude cage around the convoy. Next, the tags. And another hand sign activated the next part of the trap. Tags planted on the trees suddenly activated and clouds of gunpowder were shot forward and soon filled the forests. And finally, the explosives. Shikamaru finished with his last hand sign. The shadow clone Kakashi had created as completely destroyed in the resulting explosion, along with most of the forests, but the felled trees stopped it from spreading anymore and causing a forest fire. Nice job, Shikamaru, but what about the chakra armor? Kakashi asked, and Shikamaru simply pointed to a seal array glowing underneath the convoy. Bando has a few Fuinjutsu masters with him, and his convoys are said to have an unreal durability, so I just scaled down the explosion to a level that it's been reported to endure. Shikamaru answered. Most of that stuff was actually just smoke. I just laced it with gunpowder. Nice plan, now let's see what's in the thing. Kakashi spoke up as he landed next to the convoy, and a look at the seal had him stop Shikamaru from moving forward. I'm going to need some time to crack this one, so go sit down. It's going to take a while. Kakashi spoke up as he drew out a scroll, and a surge of chakra gave him a rod that he channeled chakra to, the tip of it forming into a sharp point. All right, I can always go take a nap, Shikamaru answered before sitting down at the base of a tree, and his hands formed a circle. At least now I have time to think about Naruto now. He's definitely changed, but I still don't know how much. I guess the others would see if to, but they're all most likely blaming it on his 5 years of training, but that's not right. I've looked through all the reports we've had from Jiraiya in the last 5 years, and they were monthly, so I have a good grasp of everything up to 2 years into it. After that, everything changes, well, at least to me. A curse from Kakashi drew Shikamaru's attention before the masked Jonin turned to him. We may be here a few hours, actually, Kakashi shouted to him, and Shikamaru sighed before going back to his thoughts. Naruto is nowhere near who he was before, and training doesn't do that to someone. How he fought Kakashi-sensei is proof of the matter. He may have looked impulsive and showboating to everyone else, but he planned that. Whatever that Zanpakuto thing is, it basically turned him into a god, and the old Naruto would have been challenging everyone to a fight and going over the top with it. But this Naruto isn't. He's using his shadow clones to fight for him, and he's almost never actually on the battlefield. What we have with us is definitely not Naruto, just a puppet he's using, since we would all know if it was a shadow clone. The technique's pretty good since it fooled both Kiba and Shino. He's got his scent and chakra signature on it, so I can't underestimate him. Another curse from Kakashi as he drew out another scroll, and in a puff of smoke, he held 2 of the rods in his hands and began moving around the seal with both of them a blur. Why does he keep interrupting me? But back to the matter at hand, Naruto is planning something big from the looks of it. He's working on something that he doesn't want anybody to know about, hence why he has Taka. Shikamaru let out a sigh at that. Taka, I think I know who he is, but there's no way of knowing for sure until I can get that mask off. That mask is layered in seals that changed the guy's chakra signature, and that's something I know for sure. Shinobi training or not, someone would have found a guy that powerful long before Naruto did. The question is just who could get that power. He seems to be around Naruto's age, maybe a few years older or younger, and he fights pretty good and knows what Naruto's going to do next without a word, so they must have some history. It's almost annoying to see that, but I can get back to that later. Right now I need a plan for when that Bando guy really does show up and tries to kill us for messing with his shipments. The guy is probably near Kage level or above it. He's able to keep hundreds of Jonin and thousands of Chunin under his control simultaneously, so he's going to be a pain to fight, even if I know the battlefield and manage to layer it with traps. But he'll probably just tank through them all. The guy has durability close to the 3rd Raikage, so it's not going to be fun to fight him. He's smart too, so he's going to weaken us first with his troops before coming in himself and finishing us all off. Man, that's just going to be troublesome, Shikamaru thought with a sigh. Why do I have to be assigned to this mission? Why not someone like Choji or Lee? Shikamaru decided to just sleep then, planning to deal with the rest of his problems later on. Emige Cure. The shadows of a building within the village seemed to distort as a figure slowly rose out of them. No rain, that's good, Taka thought as he placed several genjutsu over himself, hiding him from all shinobi except those of the likes of Itachi Uchiha. Taka decided against using chakra to move even with the sensory barrier of the rain down for now, and simply used 3 long years of hellish physical training to move across the rooftops at high speeds and climbed up a building to survey the industrial village of Amigakure. Where should I head first? I don't have any informants here with their utter devotion to their leader, but that doesn't mean I can't gather information if I find the right people, Taka thought before finding what was obviously a tourist shop or at least something close to it. Hopefully I can at least get some information before the rain begins again. That will do, Taka muttered before quickly scaling down the roof, and a few genjutsu gave him the appearance of a tourist of aim. Hello, can I help you? The old man in charge of the shop asked as Taka walked inside. Yeah. Could you tell me about the sights around here? Taka asked, and the shopkeeper quickly handed over a map. There's a place not far down here that can give you a route to take to go and see everything Amigakure has to offer. But I haven't seen your picture in the notice Pain-sama sent out. How long have you been here? The shopkeeper asked, and Taka mentally cursed before he moved faster than the old man could blink and quietly placed his unconscious form down in a nearby chair before tapping 2 fingers to his forehead, giving him a few false memories while erasing his real ones. Now you'll believe you had simply sat down for a rest and fell asleep on accident, Taka thought as he walked out the back of the store, dropping his genjutsu disguise and noticing the 3 shinobi crouched on the rooftops behind the shop. He climbed up the building and 3 drugged senbon found their way into the 3 aim nin. Taka caught two who were about to fall as he kicked the third in the middle back onto the rooftop. These two are Chunin. Taka spoke as he glanced at the one in the middle. He's the Jonin in charge here. He glanced around the rooftop for a moment, looking for something but not finding it. Taka quietly cursed before quickly binding the three in wire strings and shooting forward to the next rooftop, still fearful to use chakra but moving at his max speed without it. AIM typically uses 5 men squads of 1 Jonin and 4 Chunin, and since I only got 2 Chunin and 1 Jonin, that means 2 were sent to inform another guard post of an intrusion. Taka thought as he saw the 2 Chunin moving across the rooftops at top speed, but it was still far too slow to him. He let out a sigh nonetheless as he grabbed both by the back of their heads and slammed them face first into the ground before drugged Sunban were stabbed into their arms. He let out a sigh but cursed when he was forced to dodge a volley of shuriken as the 2 Chunin burst into portals of water. Mizu Bunshin, of course. Taka thought as he was about to make a hand sign when an alarm was surrounded. "You've got to be kidding me," Taka shouted as he noticed only 4 Chunin attacking him from the nearby guard post. The Jonin had left and raised the alarm. A kunai through the throat of each took down the Chunin, and Taka quickly threw the bodies into the alley below him before throwing them into the nearby dumpster, hiding the corpses for now at least. He left very quickly after that, racing through the streets and praying his genjutsu stayed up as he felt several chakra signatures race across the rooftops on either side of him. Damn, I'll have to use some ninjutsu after all, Taka thought with a curse before forming several hand signs. Right-tun. Signal flare. Taka called out before pointing a palm towards both rooftops, and a beam of lightning and chakra fired toward both as he swept his hands over the rooftops, making sure to hit as much as he could in the brief moments he kept the jutsu active. Would have settled for something a little less flashy, but this will have to do, Taka thought with a sigh before using a shunsin to appear next to a temporarily blinded AIM Nin, looking to be a fresh Chunin. Taka snapped their neck in seconds before tossing the body off the rooftop with a kunai embedded in their chest. It angled to look as if it was thrown from the ground and was satisfied at the way the body landed. To a medical Nin it looked as if the fall did it. He used another shunsin to appear behind 2, and a kunai lengthened to the size of a katana blade using chakra went across their necks before Taka threw them behind him and off the rooftops into an alley below him. That's just 3 Chunin. Where are the Jonin? Taka asked himself even as he flung a handful of shuriken into the chest of 2 more Chunin. I should see at least some of them by now. Suetun! Gunshot! Several voices called out, and the pressurized bullets of water slammed into the rooftops around Taka, all of them exploding into crushing waves of water that Taka leapt into the air to avoid. Suetun, Grand Water Prison. At least 6 voices called out in unison as the water surged around the still airborne Taka, and it formed into a sphere with him in the center of it. Raitun, Emotion Wave. 3 voices called out, and Taka only grinned form beneath his mask as the lightning surged through the water. Raitun, Dragon's Roar. Taka called out despite the water filling his mouth and the lightning sent into the water mixed with his chakra as it surged into him before it exploded, blasting the water away as Taka collapsed onto the rooftop spitting out water. Okay, this infiltration has failed, Taka commented as he sat down on the rooftop and observed the twitching shinobi lining the rooftops around him, the electrified water shocking them into unconsciousness. I could have planned this one a little better, I guess, Taka thought with a sigh as he slowly stood to his feet. The rain began again suddenly, and Taka paled as he scrambled to his feet, falling into complete panic for the moment. No, no, no! Taka screamed as he raced off the rooftops, and a quick scan of the walls around the village showed him the Jonin of Amigakure lining the rooftops and ready to attack anything that entered the large clear space separating the walls from the village itself. That's a kill zone. If I step into that I get filled with kunai and shuriken, but if I stay here I get to me. His thoughts were cut off as he let out a scream of pain as he was suddenly slammed into a wall. Is this it? A voice asked. This is the intruder who entered the village. Yes, Pain-sama, this is the intruder one of the guard posts detected. A Jonin answered, and the spiky orange-haired man sent away the Jonin with a wave of his hand. Then I will handle him, Pain answered as he jumped off the rooftop while forming a single hand sign. Suetun, Gunshot. Pain spoke as he fired several of the pressurized bullets of water and intentionally hit the ground, causing several waves of water to slam into the still disoriented but slowly moving Taka and send him slamming into the wall behind him. The impact knocked some sense back into the shinobi, and he hurriedly used chakra to shoot up the now deserted wall and pushed off it as he kneaded chakra in his mouth as he formed severe hand signs. Katan, dragon's breath, Taka called out as he spewed out a large mass of flames, turning the water into mist. This mist will not save you. Pain spoke as he landed within the heart of the mist. I will defeat you here, intruder. The name is Taka. A voice spoke up and Pain simply turned in the direction of the voice with one of his palms rose up to face it. Shinra Tensei, Pain called out as the mist was blown away in an instant only to know he hit nothing. Taka landed behind him and made to stab him with a kunai in both hands for a black rod to emerge from within Pain's sleeve and move behind him to block it, and Taka cursed before leaping back, throwing a handful of shuriken that Pain batted away with the rod before throwing it forward. Taka grabbed it with one hand while the other drew another handful of shuriken and threw it forward. Pain sidestepped the shuriken and sent a surge of chakra to the black rod in Taka's hand, causing it to lengthen from barely a foot long to several yards long and aiming to impale Taka across it, but the masked shinobi managed to toss it away in time. Pain simply pulled it to him using a chakra thread launched from a finger and spun it in one hand. Do you surrender yet? Pain asked, and Taka only charged forward, kunai sliding into each hand and both flowing with chakra. Pain blocked both chakra-infused kunai with the black rod in his hands, and Taka grinned as explosive tags slid out of his sleeves and onto the kunai as he released them, the two knives embedded in the rod. Pain tossed the rod away moments before it exploded and raced after Taka, who blocked his furious taijutsu attack before kicking off of his raised knee as he sidestepped the blow to his stomach. Pain didn't follow, and instead another black rod slid into his hand before he flung it forward at Taka, only for the masked shinobi to easily dodge it but not the explosive tags shooting off of it and onto the coat he wore. Damn! Taka cursed as he quickly leapt into the air sans the coat, and its detonation formed a large crater. He landed and Pain was already on him, a kunai in both hands and aiming to kill him with one in the neck and one in his heart. Taka knocked aside the one aimed for his stomach and bent back to avoid the one about to be embedded in his neck. Pain lashed out with a kick once his attack failed, and it solidly connected with Taka's chest, and threw him back only for the shinobi to flip and land on the wall of a nearby building in a crouch. Is that all you've got? Taka asked, and Pain continued to look at him with a bored expression. I would ask the same of you, but I know you are trying your hardest in this fight. Pain answered back, and Taka pulled on several wire strings with a grin moments later. Good observation. Taka answered back as several giant shuriken released from tags pulled off the nearby walls by Taka were aimed to turn Pain into a pin cushion. Pain moved faster than Taka could see, and the shuriken fell in pieces around him as a sharpened black rod, acting like a sword, was flung towards Taka. Taka intercepted it with several shuriken moving in a pincer flight path that knocked the rod to the ground immediately, the masked shinobi taking no chances anymore as Pain merely sighed. It is time I end this pointless battle. Pain spoke. Go ahead and try it. Taka answered as he found himself kicked into a wall as Pain landed on the ground where he just was. Doton, stone-tearing dragon. Pain called out as he formed a hand sign before slamming a palm onto the ground, and the ground at his feet rapidly turned into a dragon that quickly rose up into the air with him on it. Katan pottery flames. Pain called out next as he pressed a palm to the dragon's head, and Taka observed fire ignite in its body. It's hollow, why through? Taka asked himself even as he formed several hand signs, preparing another jutsu. Doton mudslide. Pain called out next, and the dragon was filled with mud that caught on fire. Doton, swamp of the underworld. Taka found himself trapped moments later and cursed. It's a combination attack and I fell for it. Taka thought in annoyance as he found his arms sinking into the mud now below him. Die, intruder. Pain spoke before the dragon roared as it fired a barrage of flaming mud bullets down on Taka, and the masked shinobi cursed. No choice, going to have to use raw chakra for this one, Taka thought in a panic before letting out a shout. The mud was blasted away by the blue vortex that engulfed him, and Taka leapt off of the clear ground at his feet. Shinra Tensei. Pain whispered, and Taka's eyes widened as he saw the sphere of repulsion expand rapidly. Is he really a god? Taka thought moments before he was struck by the repulsion field, and he slammed into the metal wall around the village, denting it before he was ripped out by Pain. So, you are Uzumaki's agent then? Pain asked as he held Taka's limp form in one hand. You aren't very impressive, but you were destined to lose against my power. Very few even know of it. You shouldn't give me that type of information. You never know how long I'll live after this. Taka managed to get out. I may surprise you. No, you won't. Pain answered as he placed a hand in front of Taka's chest, a black ball of energy appearing in it. Shinra Tensei. Taka was blasted into the ground this time, and the water from the rain was slowly filling the crater Taka's body had created. He just shattered most of the bones in my body. How does he have so much power and no one even knows about it? Taka asked himself as pain lowered down to him. The masked shinobi only had a single thought as his world went black. Maybe he really is a god. Naruto didn't know why, but he felt something was off as he approached the convoy he was assigned after intercepting the corpse posing as him and sealing it into a scroll. It's probably nothing. Naruto shrugged off the feeling as he landed on the road in front of the trapped convoy and drew his Zanpakuto. Bow your head, Wabasuk. Naruto whispered, and his sword was consumed in a bright light before he raced forward with his sword drastically changed. It had lost its curve and was straightened as well as gaining 290-degree curves at the end of the blade, making 3 sides of a square, with the cutting edge of the weapon on the inside of the curve. He was easily spotted by the 3 shinobi in front of the wagon holding the weapons, but Naruto simply ducked under the volley of weapons sent his way. He was too fast to be seen as he appeared behind the Chunin in the middle and hit them several times in the back with Wabasuk before leaping onto the top of the wagon as the Chunin collapsed to the ground. Ryu, what's wrong with you? One of the Chunin shouted as they crouched down next to his fellow shinobi only to see blood leaking from his mouth. Gurgling noises could be heard as Naruto descended down on 2 others behind the wagon and struck them both 4 times in a few seconds, and they collapsed to the ground, cratering it. Ken, what's wrong with you? How did you break the thing? A Chunin appearing on a tree branch shouted only to see a flash of black before he knew no more. Naruto had blitzed him the moment he saw him, and the sharp inside of Wabasuk as he held the blade in a reverse grip acted as a reverse guillotine and removed his head from his shoulder. Naruto knocked aside the kunai and shuriken sent towards him with a swipe of Wabasuk, and as a Chunin attempted to shatter his skull against the tree trunk behind him, he vanished and appeared behind them before tapping them on the back 5 times. The tree branch shattered beneath him as Naruto leapt to one on a tree opposite. How the hell is he doing that? One of the dozen of Chunin surrounding Naruto asked out loud, and the Uzumaki decided to answer him. Wabasuk is a special sword. It doubles the weight of anything it strikes. Your friend there weighed around 150 pounds. I hit him 5 times, so his new weight was near 4,800 pounds. In the end, his new weight crushed his internal organs and snapped the tree branch beneath him. Naruto slowly spoke as the Chunin around him paled. Normally, I would only hit you 3 times and then execute you with the sharpened edge within Wabasuk, but I don't have the time to give you all chance for penance, so this will have to do for you. A hail of shuriken and kunai mixed with a few low-level fire and wind jutsu were easily avoided by the Uzumaki leaping into the air, and as 3 Chunin leapt at him, he simply spun in the air, Wabasuk striking all 3 5 times and sending them plummeting to the ground with audible cracks heard as their new weight crushed their bones. Naruto ducked under a sword swing from another Chunin as he descended before striking the blade several times with Wabasuk, and the Chunin plummeted to the ground with the sword pulling him down. Those remaining winced as pain screams reached them. The sword's great weight had crushed the Chunin's fingers and kept him pinned to the ground. The remaining Chunin stared in shock at the sight until Naruto appeared behind 2 dumbstruck Chunin and Wabasuk was slipped under their necks before he stepped back and their heads quickly rolled off of their shoulders. And don't think the blade still isn't sharp. It's actually much sharper than the average blade. Naruto told the few remaining Chunin. You all really should come with the intent to kill, then perhaps you could stop me. The 6 remaining Chunin leapt out of their hiding places and aimed to take Naruto down in a volley of shuriken and kunai with blasts of wind, fire, water, and lightning raining down on Naruto along with them. Said Uzumaki merely sighed before he quickly vanished from sight, and the Chunins panicked. Where is he? Where did he go? What is this guy in the first place? Fools. The Uzumaki thought with a sigh as he appeared behind the Chunin. Each Chunin found their heads removed moments later as Naruto then approached the pinned-down Chunin. Please don't kill me. I've got information on Bando. I could give you names. Anything you want, just please don't kill me. The Chunin nearly screamed in a panic as they saw Naruto approach. The Uzumaki's eyes showed nothing as he vanished from sight before appearing behind the Chunin. You carry a sword, so you must know of what battle is, correct? Naruto asked, and the Chunin only shook in terror as Wabasuk's bladed edge wrapped around their neck. You know the risk every time you wake add place that sword on your back yet you do it anyway. Yes, yes I do and I repent for my actions. For the lives I've taken but I had no choice. It was either follow orders or be killed and I never let the others do. Blood was slowly drawn from his neck as Wabasuk cut into it as Naruto pulled the blade back. So you know begging an enemy for any type of mercy is pointless, correct? Naruto asked as the Chunin began to drown in his own blood as it poured down his throat and into his lungs. You know that penance does not save you from an enemy who knows what battle is but accepts it when he is forced into combat, even if they are against such a tragedy. With a vicious pull, he ripped the blade through the Chunin's neck before vanishing in a burst of smoke. What the hell is going on up there? Why have we stopped? A Chunin near the back shouted only for the Jonin riding on top of the wagon to sigh as he heard the first few wagons of the convoy crash into the ground with loud thuds. Naruto Uzumaki, it just had to be you. Konoha sends to the convoy I'm guarding. The Jonin thought before drawing the hook swords on their back, and a flick of their wrist had the spearhead end longer as he covered the blade in chakra. And he decides to use a damn blade I know everything about, just great. I get to be bored in this fight. The Jonin sighed before leaping off of the wagon and landing in front of Naruto. His blades in an X-block stopping the overhead swing made to stop the wagon from moving. Jet. Naruto named the mercenary with a nod. Naruto. The now named Jet answered as he seemed unimpeded by Wabasuk's effect. I see you still like to use that sword whenever you fight personally. It reflects what I see battle as penance before death. Naruto answered before kicking the mercenary away only for one spearhead to be stabbed into the ground before they used it as a pivot to swing back around towards Naruto with the curved blade of the hook sword over their hand on their other sword aimed to cut off his head. Naruto knocked the sword into the air using Wabasuk and leapt back and onto a wagon. I never could get you with this Jet. Naruto commented with a grin before letting out a sigh. Now I have to use another sword instead. He leaped back and Wabasuk changed back into his normal katana. Awaken, Beneheim. Naruto whispered before he raced forward with his blade changed once again. It took the form of a sleek medium-sized sword with a smooth black decorative wrapping with the hilt bending forward at the end with a pommel overlapping 3 times and a crimson tassel dangling from the end. The blade lacked a handguard but a U-shaped guard extended 3 inches up the blade with a flower petal design with a red string wrapped around the base of the guard 3 times with a 3-loop bow on the back with a folded paper decoration on the front. The blade was black with a silver edge and was slim and straight with a somewhat short size with the tip ending in a slanted razor-like edge instead of tapering at a point as a normal katana would. So, what's that? Jet asked as he flicked his wrist again and the hooks were longer this time and he leaned on them as he rose an eyebrow. I've got no detail on that form you're using right there, so what can it do? Many things, many things. Naruto answered and the figure looked towards the clouds in the sky with a sigh. Of course you would give as vague an answer as possible and no one I know has ever seen that sword and I've never seen it and I bet only you and that agent of yours, Taka, has seen what it can do. You would be correct. Naruto answered before swinging the blade forward. Shirbari, Beneheim. A blood-red net descended down on Jet. Emerging formed the hilt of Beneheim only for the hook swords to easily cut through it and Jet hooked the 2 swords together into a nunchaku-like weapon before spinning it. Massive chakra blades released along the arc of the swing. Chikasumi no Tate. Naruto called out as a crimson shield of energy appeared in front of him and easily withstood the attacks by the hook swords. Jetthru appeared behind Naruto with the curved blade over his hand aiming to slash down across both of Naruto's shoulder blades. A surgeon's I telling you Jet aimed to sever vital muscles in that area to make it nearly impossible to use his arms. Kamisori, Beneheim. Naruto called out as he slashed in front of him and a crimson wave of energy was released from his blade that shot into the air at a curve before slamming into Jet, throwing him back as it detonated with a massive amount of force. Jetthru recovered in midair with a lazy grin on his face as he landed with his feet sticking to a tree as Naruto appeared to his right. Kurosaki, Beneheim. Naruto called out as he slashed straight up into the air, and a large crimson shield appeared in front of him before a barrage of crimson energy bullets shot towards Jet, who grinned as he spun himself so he could launch off the tree on the other side. He moved from tree to tree as Naruto followed after him. His Kurosaki technique now held at the tip of his blade and destroying everything in his path with the explosive energy bullets it constantly released. Jet suddenly vanished ahead of Naruto and appeared above him, the spearhead end of his hook swords coming down, both brimming with chakra. Sapane, Beneheim. Naruto whispered and Jet only grinned as with a flash of red light he found his attack stopped. He soon began chuckling, which soon turned into full-blown laughter as he leapt into the trees. Yes, finally, you're aiming to kill me. Jet's voice seemed to come from everywhere, and Naruto quickly stopped trying to find him. I could feel the killing intent flow from that single action. It's screaming to me only of death. Naruto grinned at that. Of course it would. Naruto answered before his grin turned purely homicidal. I want to kill you. With that roar, Naruto stabbed Benihime into the ground. Bankai! Naruto was consumed in an inferno of flames before it was swiftly tossed aside as he threw off the top piece of his clothes. Raika Goen Kaku! Naruto roared as the teen slammed his transformed Zanpakuto into the ground. It was an enlarged sword with the end a hook, and the edge of the blade a crimson-red color, with the inner side of the hooked blade sporting several jagged pieces along it. A large white light purple trim shell covered the hilt of the blade with a massive pauldron slash shield with the handle hidden inside, and the sword was as tall as Naruto now. I know about this one. Jet spoke before landing on the ground with his hook swords overflowing with chakra. Naruto grinned as he was consumed in an inferno emerging from the top of the sword. Now let's see what you can do, Jet. Naruto roared before charging forward, Jet mirroring him. Jet swung his swords towards Naruto only for the Uzumaki to move both himself and his massive weapon out of the way before unleashing a blast of fire from the hollow pauldron of the Zanpakuto. Jet tossed away the flames with a cross slash from his swords and swung towards Naruto, formed two directions, one from the left and one from the right, and both aiming to slash his neck open or remove his shoulders with a flick of their wielder's wrist. Naruto grinned as he blocked Jet's hook swords with the massive form of Raika Goen Kaku. Is that the best you've got? Naruto asked with a grin only for Jet to swipe up with one sword, the spearhead end releasing a razor-sharp crescent of chakra that Naruto easily knocked aside with his Zanpakuto before unleashing a burst of flames that Jet vanished from sight to avoid, and this put the Uzumaki on edge. Jet suddenly appeared in the air behind him, and Naruto grinned as he pointed the pauldron part of his Zanpakuto up towards Jet, whose eyes widened as he saw the flames building up in the hollow pauldron. Crap! Got to think of something now. Jet thought in a panic as a plan rapidly formed in his mind. He quickly linked his hook swords together before sending the spearhead end of one down to the ground and pulled himself out of the blast of fire with it only for Naruto to swing the hook end of the sword towards him. A crescent made of fireballs launched towards Jet, who countered with two crescent of chakra that tore through them, and Naruto quickly shielded himself behind his massive weapon. Jet appeared above him suddenly, and Naruto quickly grabbed the handle in the hollow pauldron and dragged the weapon down at an angle to block Jet's descending slashes. With a roar, the Uzumaki pushed the blade up and tossed Jet into the air, where he tucked himself into a ball before landing on a tree before Naruto ripped the Zanpakuto up out of the ground before pointing the hook end towards Jet and unleashing fireball after fireball fired from the tip of it. Jet grinned as he cut them all to shreds with countless razor-sharp crescents of chakra and landed on the ground in front of Naruto with his blades swinging upwards to cut Naruto in half vertically. A burst of flames forced Jet to leap into the air to avoid it or be roasted, and once there Jet grinned before letting loose a pulse of chakra out to rush across his blades. His chakra roared across the blades in his hands as he shot down, even as Naruto fired burst of fire up after him time after time, only to miss as Jet either knocked them away with his chakra-infused swords or a single cut down the middle blew away the flames. This isn't working, Naruto thought with a curse as he leapt to the side to avoid Jet as he crashed into the ground. I have the raw power but not the speed to match him. Jet swung both blades blade and crescents of chakra shot towards Naruto, who stabbed the hook end of his Zanpakuto into the ground and crouched down behind it to endure the bombardment before sending a surge of chakra to the weapon. Raiden! Naruto roared as a massive fireballs hot out of the pauldron at the end of the weapon, and once high in the air it broke apart into a dozen more than rained down towards Jet, who avoided them only to see them track him. A slash of both swords together unleashed a massive wave of chakra that threw away the fireballs only for Naruto to appear behind him, flames filling the pauldron as he swung it down to face Jet. Crap! Let's try this again, Raiden! Naruto roared as he fired a single massive fireball into Jet that hit him with force. Naruto wasn't finished yet through as he fired several more fireballs that arched around to attack from all angles before spinning the blade above his head, flames engulfing both it and him before he slammed the hook portion into the ground with enough force to cause cracks to spread out from the point of impact. Goen Ryuga! Naruto roared as the clearing was engulfed in spears of fire moments later. Jet leapt out of them, having used his chakra-infused swords to cut away the spears aimed for him. Naruto grinned as he moved the pauldron towards the airborne Jet. Goen Ryuga! Naruto called out again, and this time the spears launched from the hollow portion, aiming to skewer Jet on hundreds of them. Jet grinned as he formed a single very familiar hand sign. Kage Bunshin. Jet called out, and 3 shadow clones burst to life in front of him before each swung their chakra-enhanced sword several times before dissipating. The many waves of chakra all formed into one, and it made a solid wall that crashed into the spears of fire and would have slammed into Naruto if he hadn't leapt away, only to have Jet appear at his back. Jet slashed down with one sword while moving up with the other, making a scissor motion aimed to cut Naruto's spine out from his body, only for the Uzumaki to use a blast of fire to shoot himself into the air before spinning the massive weapon above his head. He unleashed a massive blast of flame down towards Jet from the air, only for the mercenary to already be gone and resting in a tree. Naruto landed with some caution before he was forced to dodge out of the way of a hail of explosive kunai that detonated in midair. Jet appeared to Naruto's side with his 2 swords pressed together with both hands and aimed to bisect Naruto at the waist with the chakra-enhanced blades. Naruto used another jet of flames to blast to the side at an angle and rolled as he hit the ground, Raikage embedding in the ground next to him. He fired several fireballs up towards the falling Jet, only for Jet to cleave through them by pressing his 2 hook swords together and slashing them down as one, unleashing a massive crescent of chakra to cut through the flames. Naruto cursed before he charged up to meet him with a burst of flames from Raikage. He and Jet clashed in the air in a blur before Naruto crashed into the ground as Jet landed sideways on a tree. Naruto stabbed the hook end of his Zanpakuto into the ground to drag himself to his feet, and he was obviously feeling the effects of whatever Jet did during their brief clash. He was panting as he slowly stood up, the dozens of small cuts, the minuscule blades of chakra Jet's rapid swings released healing, but not at the speed he would have liked, especially when fighting someone like Jet. "I'm rusty. I haven't had a good fight in a long time if Jet can beat me like this," Naruto thought as he resealed his Zanpakuto. And that too damn big blade isn't helping against a speed fighter like Jet. Naruto very well remembered the beatings Jet nearly regularly handed out to him during their first few encounters, as well as his moves. He attacks me from behind or at the side, always in blind spot, and uses chakra to extend the reach of his blade. He remembered him dodging Jet's blow once and the chakra coating his blades, giving the blade nearly triple its length and nearly taking his arm in the surprise. He doesn't do well in tight quarters or when I box him in. It was hard to forget the one time he had managed to trap Jet using Senbonzakura, and the swordsman had turned berserk in his escape from the sphere of petals surrounding him, nearly killing him in the resulting carnage as a result of it. He also likes to prolong fights, if he can at least. Once Jet had been on the verge of killing him, but he had slowed his strike at the last second, giving Naruto just enough time to draw Zabamaru back to himself, rather clumsily he would admit later on, and throw him aside with the extendable blade. All in all, he's a pain in the ass to fight. Naruto sighed as he let loose a surge of chakra as he drew his blade once again. Kick about Los Lobos. Naruto was consumed in a pillar of chakra, and it quickly faded to show his clothes changed to that of his Los Lobos form. "I see you've changed your weapon again, and I don't know this one at all nice." Jet spoke as he landed on the ground in front of Naruto. "You're just a walking arsenal, aren't you, kid?" "You can say so," Naruto answered, his one visible blue eye looking at Jet lazily. "I can't really say I like using this form. It's pretty powerful." "We'll see about that, kid," Jet answered before he charged forward. Naruto leapt back into the air before his chakra fired from the 2 guns in his hands as bullets. Jet dodged them as he rushed up a tree behind Naruto before launching off it, and the Uzumaki quickly shot at him, only for Jet to deflect the bullets of chakra with one sword, and the other was charged with chakra to the extreme. "Crap," Naruto muttered as Jet grinned as he slashed the hook sword up at Naruto. A massive crescent of chakra slammed into him and powered him into the ground before exploding, releasing a dome-shaped blast that leveled the area around the two. Naruto sighed from within the crater before kicking up to his feet in time to avoid the spearhead end of both swords from skewering through his head, and he raised one gun before whispering one word. "Zero," Naruto whispered as a massive blue beam of energy shot out of the barrel and slammed into Jet. Jet was thrown back into the trees and grinned as he shot forward, only for Naruto leap high above him before pointing both guns down at him. "Zero Metrolita," Naruto shouted as he fired dozens of blasts at once down on Jet, who used his chakra-enhanced blades to deflect them with some difficulty. Naruto fired a stronger Zero down at Jet that served 2 purposes. One was to try and kill him, and the other was to give him enough momentum to reach a treetop nearby. Jet glanced at the massive Siro barreling towards him, and with a surge of chakra to both blades he cut the Siro in half as his chakra formed a massive cleaver blade not unlike what the dead Zabuza Momoichi once used, and Naruto grinned as he saw his attack tossed aside so easily. This guy really is a master swordsman. He can even deflect my Siro Metrolita without much effort. I wish I could get this guy as a teacher, Naruto commented as he ceased his attack for now and holstered his two guns. Nice job, kid. Think you can keep fighting like that? Jet asked as he stood on a treetop to lock eyes with Naruto with a grin. I'm starting to really think you can handle my full power at this rate. Culmillo, Naruto whispered as two blades of blue energy appeared in his hands, the blue energy forming them coming from his bandoliers. Do you think you can keep up, old man? Naruto asked and Jet only grinned. Let's find out then, kid. Jet spoke before both shot forward, both grinning as they charged towards the other. Emige Cure. Deep inside the Tower of Pain a scream resounded. It was on of sheer agony and lesser man would have fled by now. Not the five cloaked figures standing outside the room through. They seemed unperturbed by it, even ignoring it. You hold information I doubt you may even speak, but we will try it. Give me the information you have on Naruto Uzumaki. You can burn in hell. Another scream followed that shout. He's pretty good at this, isn't he, Itachi? A blue-skinned shark-like man asked their partner, a large bandaged sword across their back. He will break like they all always do. It is only a matter of time, Kisame. The black-haired and eyed man answered, one of their prominent features being the tear tracks on their face. Pain will break him. It will just take time. The screaming stopped suddenly. The door opened and Pain stepped out of the door. Has he talked? Kisame asked and Pain simply shook his head. Uzumaki has picked well. The boy refuses to talk at all. Pain answered and Itachi rose an eyebrow at that. Such devotion to endure all of that just in the less than 5 years of contact they've had with the boy? Itachi thought in no minor amount of shock. May I speak with him, Pain? Itachi asked after a moment. Pain looked at him for a moment before waving his hand towards the door as he turned away. Do as you wish. You may also attempt to get information as well if you wish. Pain answered as he walked down the hall. The rest of us shall head into a meeting. Itachi wordlessly stepped into the room to find being blue-haired and auburn-eyed partner keeping him wrapped in paper and suspended in the air with the paper seemingly soaked in blood, turning it a dark red. You may leave Conan. I can deal with him myself. Itachi spoke and the blueonette merely rose a fine eyebrow at that. I will remain here, Itachi. Conan answered as the bound Taka floated forward. That paper is keeping him where he is right now. Don't let his defeat fool you into thinking you stand a chance against him. He is still very strong. Enough to worry even Bando. I doubt I have much to worry about, but you may remain, I suppose. Itachi spoke after a moment as he walked up to Taka, and before he could ask the paper on his face peeled away yet only enough to reveal his eyes. I need to see his entire face, Conan. Itachi spoke after a moment. Pain has ordered his identity remain hidden. His reasons are his own. Conan answered as well as stopping Itachi's future questions. The former Konohinin simply sighed as he simply closed his eyes for a moment before the three-tomo red-eyed dojutsu known as the Sharingan filled both eyes. Taka's eyes widened at the sight and his struggle could barely be seen before he let loose a muffled scream as the paper seemed to turn into blades and shoot into his body. Itachi stepped back from the spray of blood as the paper now soaked in blood folded itself and flew to the floor. Itachi glanced behind Conan to see a collection of red origami and couldn't help but wince as Taka collapsed to the floor, a mask of paper still covering the lower half of his face. A variety of seals were actually burned into Taka's skin along his arms, across his chest, and down his back, forming a seal matrix that kept him from doing much. Itachi himself identified several tracking seals, chakra-suppressing seals, and even a blood-replenishing seal. But Itachi was no seal master, so he didn't know that much, and they were dozens of seals on Taka, each intricately linked to the others in a both beautiful and deadly display of skill. Who did this? Itachi asked as Taka was limp on the ground and Itachi noticed a paralyzed seal placed as well. Pain did it. Conan answered as she walked up to Taka and dragged him up by his hair, which Itachi noticed was streaked both black and white. How dangerous is he? Itachi asked and Conan simply gestured to his seal-covered body. He is as harmless as a puppy right now. Conan answered, and Itachi nodded before dragging the captured prisoner up by his long hair and forcing him to look into his Sharingan. When he attempted to close them, a seal came to life, located on his left shoulder, and Taka's body shook in agony as he managed to hold in the scream. His eyes were forced open, and Itachi began his genjutsu assault, starting off with one of his lesser ones. Taka found himself in a red-tinted world where he stood bound to a cross, his body unmoving and unresponsive to his will. He suddenly felt large nails driven into his torso and nearly bit off his tongue, holding in his scream even as Itachi walked up from behind him. "What do you know of Naruto Uzumaki?" Itachi asked. "Simply tell me all you know and I will end this." Taka remained silent, and the Uchiha sighed. "Then I'm afraid you will suffer considerably." Itachi spoke before waving his hands, and Taka felt something tightly wrap around his neck before he felt something pierce it. A glance down showed Itachi had wrapped barbed wire around his throat, and with a twitch of his fingers it coiled itself around his throat and slowly cut its way inside. Taka felt every moment of it, the genjutsu refusing to give him a reprieve from the pain, and he couldn't even scream now as his voice box was destroyed. "You will experience this until you tell me what I wish to know," Itachi told Taka as blood poured down his body from his neck, and he was soon covered in it as the barbed wire seemed to extend, slowly covering his entire body in constant agony. "His mental shields are stronger than I thought they could be. He could even hold back Inoichi Yamanaka for almost a day with his skills," Itachi thought in some shock. "Everything is shielded. I suppose this will remain a two-front assault on my part." Convoy 3. The three Chunin in front were bored. "Nothing ever happens on these stupid things, we just sit here the entire time," a Chunin muttered while tossing a kunai in the air. "Why the hell did I sign up for this again?" "You needed the money, Tora. Remember that gambling debt you owe?" his partner answered. "Thanks for reminding me. I think I suck at poker almost as bad as the Slug Princess." Tora spoke after a moment with a small grin as he laid down on top of the convoy. "I should probably stop gambling." "You know you won't." The third Chunin spoke before the two Chunin flanking their wagon from the trees fell out of them, screaming. "Kikaichu, so that means Konoha decided to intervene," a Jonin near the end thought as she observed the black mass covering both screaming Chunin. "Of course they would send a Aburame for this mission. I hate fighting bug users, they always end up dead too quick." "You may begin your attack, Sakura. My Kikaichu have drained most Chunin of their chakra. Those two panicked and I couldn't restrain them quickly enough. My apologies for that." Shino spoke after a moment as Sakura nodded before leaping off the branch she stood on. She was a whirlwind of motion as she took down 4 Chunin in a second with several precise, nearly surgical-like blows. "I'll have to use precision instead of brute force with this," Sakura thought as she stabilized the chakra blades covering her hands and quickly extending both up her arms and growing a larger blade. One Chunin made the mistake of charging her when he thought her guard was down, only to meet a chakra blade through his heart, instantly killing him before Sakura used him as a shield against several shuriken, and kunai launched from Chunin emerging from the trees on either side of the path. Sakura planted several explosive tags on the Chunin before flinging him into one of the emerging groups before she sent a surge of chakra to her entire body and moving faster than their barrage of kunai and shuriken could reach her. "Ketan! Cremation flames!" Several Chunin suddenly called out and breathed out a blast of flames each that merged into a single massive one that Sakura leapt over but cursed as several Raitun Jutsu were fired up at her. Kikaichu swarmed the technique and quickly consumed the chakra, while more made a platform for her to launch herself into the trees from. Shino calmly walked out of the forest with his hands in his pocket as his swarm shot out of the forests around him. "It would be in your best interest to surrender. You will die if you continue this," Shino warned the Chunin. "Just great, an Aburame." A nearby Chunin cursed before throwing several explosive kunai forward, followed by a barrage of chakra-infused shuriken. "I hate that freaky clan." Shino merely rose one hand out of his pocket and Kikaichu quickly shredded the metal and consumed the chakra from the tags and covering the weapons. "You are fighting a losing battle. Anything you can do I have already countered once. My Kikaichu have adapted to battle and will kill you if you continue this." Shino spoke up as he pushed up his glasses. "As I said before, it will do best to surrender. All of you leave now." A voice ordered and the female Jonin landed in front of them all. "I'll deal with this kid. Just keep the convoy moving." "Hi Mika-sama," the Chunin hurriedly spoke as they leapt away. Shino simply pressed a finger to his ear. "Sakura, are you in pursuit?" Shino asked quietly as static was heard for a moment. I've laid down traps and I'm in wait along the convoy's route. Do you need me back there? Sakura asked. Just stick to the plan. I expected to encounter Jonin and have planned accordingly. Shino answered after a moment before cutting the connection. You should have let her help you, boy. Mika spoke after a moment as she reached behind her. You're not going to last long now. We will see. Shino answered before a swarm of Kakachu flew from his sleeves. A less modified swarm will do as a test. Let's see what she can do against it. Shino thought as Mika laughed before throwing a handful of senbon into the swarm. Shino sighed at that. She's insane if she thinks that. Why? Explosions devastated the swarm and Shino quickly used a shunsin to get some distance between himself and the now mad crackling of the Jonin. Explosive tags wrapped around the senbon. A perfect counter to my bugs. Shino thought even as more senbon shot towards him, he sidestepped them and flung several shuriken into the smoke, only to know they didn't hit anything as he rolled out of the way of a hail of senbon that seemed to follow him and explode once they embedded themselves in the ground. She's fought an Aburame or someone like us before. She would have had to if she has counters like this to my attacks. He's better than the usual ones I kill. Mika thought as she bounced a kunai off the trees to land behind Shino. But he's still no good. Shino cursed when he heard the thud and quickly jumped away and into the trees as he called out another wave of Kakachu with some difficulty. My hive is smaller than I would like, and it is going to take some time to call back the ones I've already sent out. Shino thought even as he threw 6 shuriken towards where he thought Mika was. Time I don't have. He narrowly avoided another wave of senbon, and he quickly drew a scroll before throwing it into the trees. A massive explosion engulfed the forest as Shino then dropped down several smoke bombs as he quickly called back his Kakachu spread across the forests. Looks like I will have to fight without my sensory net. It's a good thing father prioritized training without these past few years. Shino thought even as senbon arched down from above him. His Kakachu arrived and he grudgingly sacrificed almost a third of the swarm to block the hail of senbon. He blocked that one, just be luck. Mika thought with some annoyance. This is why I hate bug users, they get lucky a lot so I have to waste more senbon on them. Come on out already, kid, and I'll kill you quickly. Mika shouted even as she threw several senbon where she heard noise from. Shino silently appeared behind her and slammed a hand into the middle of her back. I was about to say the same to you. Shino spoke as he leapt away. There, the trackers planted, Shino thought with some relief as he sent most of his remaining swarm forward. This swarm, one of his most varied with metal-eating, high-speed chakra-devouring, miniature bombs, and many more specially bred Kakachu he didn't use often. These are a pain to breed and I just lost most of them. I'm going to have to plant some in the main hive when I return to the village. Shino thought as he leapt back to avoid the backlash from his attack. A black vortex engulfed Mika, who merely laughed as she began spinning, unleashing a hail of senbon as she did so. They blasted holes in the vortex that were filled, but it was thinning, where before it was a few meters thick it was rapidly thinning to a meter. Shino cursed as he leapt back as the senbon began to reach him. She has incredible aim, it's inhuman. Shino thought with some amazement. He had never seen someone use the small needle-like weapons so precisely. You're really starting to annoy me, kid. Mika shouted as she stopped spinning as the vortex was thrown away from her. You should have run away when you had the chance. Now I'm going to kill you by blowing pieces off. Shino cursed as he shrugged off his jacket and quickly unclasped his shirt. Looks like I'm going to have to use that technique. Shino thought as he let the light blue glow of his chakra engulf him. This is going to be annoying. With Sakura. The pink-haired kunoichi quickly cut the main artery in the neck of another chunin and let out a sigh of relief with that the last one, and she allowed her chakra scalpels to fade away. Finally, I thought I would never finish with all of you. Sakura spoke as she observed the weapon-littered battlefield, as well as the several dozen corpses either filled with weapons or laying on the ground, looking to be unharmed but still dead. At least I don't have to deal with all the blood a normal weapon would have caused. Sakura thought as she moved up to one of the wagons and wrenched it open with superhuman strength and tossed the removed door to the ground. Well, this isn't good. Sakura commented as the wagon was empty. Not even a trap inside it. That means that the real shipment is somewhere else. These were all decoys. With Kakashi. Yes, I finally broke it. Kakashi called out in triumph as he pulled open the door to the wagon only to see nothing inside. Oh, come on. Shikamaru merely sighed. Naruto still hasn't opened his. He's fighting someone right now while neither Kurenai and Kiba or Hinata and Naruto's clone has begun their attack on the others yet, but they're close. Bad news is that the convoys are meeting up, so those four will have to fight off both guard details together. Shikamaru thought with a sigh. This mission is getting more and more annoying by the second. Sunagakure. Gaara looked up from the report his sister had sent him as something landed outside his window. A wave of his hand later and sand had opened the window and a hawk flew in. It's just ink, Gaara asked out loud as he stood up. Who can even do this? Run, boy! It's an explosive. Shikaku suddenly roared in his mind and Gaara saw the many symbols painted onto the bird's underbelly. Gaara's sand shot forward to envelope the bird, but it exploded too quickly. The red-haired Kazekage found himself flying through the door as his sand hastily threw him out of his office as it burst into an inferno. Fires sealed into the bird as well? Gaara asked himself as he landed on the wall and hastily formed a hand signs. Doton, mud dragon. Gaara called out and he spewed out a massive dragon made of mud that quickly smothered the flames in his office. Gaara spotted more hawks flying throughout the village and his eyes narrowed. I recognize his attack style, Deidara used the same. Gaara thought as he rose one hand up and the sand obeyed him as it shot into the air as a sea of spikes. No one will attack my village again. The ceiling above him crumbled as the sandstone that made it broke apart into sand. Gaara rose out of it and saw Sunanin quickly lining the rooftops with shuriken launchers on their shoulders. Bring those birds down. Baki's voice ordered and a rain of shuriken shot towards the massive flocks of ink birds attacking the village. They have a limited amount of chakra, so they're coming from somewhere close by, so this will handle it. Gaara thought even as he shot a torrent of sand into the air that swiftly rained down and coated the village and desert around it. Now where are they? He raised himself up into the air and immediately saw several large birds, nearly as big as him, drop from higher in the sky and dived straight towards him. With a wave of his hands, the birds were skewered by blades of sand launched at them before Gaara pulled one hand into a fist and the falling ink was crushed by the compacting sand. He tossed the sphere of sand away and shielded his eyes from the resulting explosion. Sensing the birds attacking him from behind, a wall of sand blocked them as it quickly wrapped around the ink and stopped it from hitting the village. The ink is explosive. It's not just the birds. Gaara thought as the sand wrapped around the ink was tossed aside from the explosion. The Kazekage, noticing the intensity of the explosion, turned some of the sand to glass. Whoever they are, they're trying to stop me from using my sand. Gaara quickly formed several hand signs and red chakra leaked from his body before sinking into the sand around him. The sand immediately gained blue vein-like markings across it as Gaara found who was causing the attack. Floating high above the desert some distance formed the village on a massive ink bird. The sand beneath them shot up as a pillar that quickly morphed into a massive clawed hand that the bird avoided before ink centipedes launched down from the bird and wrapped themselves around the sand before detonating. Gaara swiftly moved his arms and the desert around Suna responded to his commands. It formed itself into a massive crushing wave of sand that rose high into the air and towered over the village before Gaara pushed his arms forward and it surged forward. The bird simply rose higher and smaller ones dived off of it to detonate against the arms of sand, aiming to grab it as it flew over the wave of sand. Gaara saw this before moving one arm to the side and his hand balled into a fist. The sand tightly compacted itself into several spheres before firing off as a rain of bullets on the bird. Ink was poured off of it and it formed into a thick black shield and Gaara saw his sand slowly breaking it down, but not quick enough as more birds raced towards the village. A massive swarm of them, and Gaara spotted explosive tags trailing behind them. He was about to call down to Baki only to see shuriken take down the birds long before they reached the walls. It looks like the village is covered, for now at least, Gaara thought before he saw the ink on the ground take shape, bringing the sand up with it. What? Gaara asked as he saw humanoid creatures made of sand and ink rush to the village walls and begin tearing them down, their arms shaping into clubs, blades, claws, anything at all to attack and break down the walls of Sunagakure. Baki seemed to have seen this, as well as dozens of shinobi lined the sides of the walls and began throwing down explosive kunai to blow the creatures to bits. More ink flowed across the sand and formed into a massive figure, made of sand bound by the ink, it forming itself into dozens of seals that held the massive creature together. It was nearly 3 times the height of village walls, and a single massive foot gave the creatures made of ink and sand their access to the village. Gaara saw this and one hand rose up before he brought it down in a fist. The sand of the desert once again obeyed him and formed into a replica of Shikaku and tackled the massive ink and sand creature to the ground before it opened its mouth. "By Jadama!" Gaara called out as red and blue orbs of chakra formed into a black sphere hovering in front of the replica's mouth. The massive explosion that followed the black sphere fired at the ink and sand Goliath consumed both it and the Shikaka duplicate as Gaara lowered his arms and turned to watch the Sunanin fight off the ink and sand creatures. "Seals are covering those things, boy. Don't try to break them with your sand." Shikaku spoke from in the seal. "It'll end badly for you." "I know that. Any suggestions on STO?" Gaara was interrupted as a roar threw away the cloud of smoke created from the tailed beast ball, and he turned in shock to see the ink and sand Goliath rise to its feet once again, tossing off the sand covering it. Gaara reacted quickly and the sand at its feet quickly stopped it before he made several hand signs. "Sand waterfall, imperial funeral," Gaara called out as he clenched both fists with both pointed towards the Goliath. Wave after wave of sand crashed into the figure moments later, each wave compacting tightly around it as Gaara slowly lifted it into the air with some effort. "Die!" Gaara ordered as he clapped his fists together and the sand imploded on itself, compacting itself rapidly. The Goliath showed itself to have immense strength as the sand stopped mere moments from crushing it and doing what the technique was named for, liquefying it in a waterfall explosion. Gaara cursed as he felt the strain to hold the technique before the creature let out a deafening roar, throwing away the sand and nearly tossing Gaara out of the air. "Bring that thing down," Baki ordered through his earpiece as he leapt back. "It's going to get into the village at this rate." Shuriken fired from launchers slammed into the behemoth and explosive tags tied to the ends of them exploded, blowing chunks out of the Goliath with each detonation. "Hit it with heavier fire," Baki ordered as massive kunai launchers were moved up to rooftops and fired. The Goliath turned into a pincushion from the sheer amount of the weapons. Explosions erupted across it only for seals on the creature to glow and it roared as ink flowed from the seals, collecting more sand and binding it to the creature much stronger now. "Hit it again," Baki ordered and another hail of kunai and shuriken answered his order. They were an even greater amount than before only for a roar from the creature to toss the weapons aside. A massive wave of sand consumed the Goliath at this point as another knocked the weapons out of the air and out the village. Gaara's eyes narrowed as he sent a surge of chakra to his sand and moments later, he clapped his hands together. "Desert layered imperial funeral," Gaara called out and the sand covering the ink and sand behemoth compacted tightly and formed into a pyramid that was quickly covered in seals. "Thank you for your assistance, Shikaku. That thing was getting on my nerves. Are you done yet with it?" The Ichibi answered. "I'm afraid not. Do you think a Baijidama would defeat it?" Gaara asked the Biju he hosted and Shikaku nodded. "It'll take a lot of my shaka to eradicate that thing and it'll have to have counter seals infused in it to break it down for good," Shikaku answered before turning serious and drawing Gaara into the seal, looking at him with a rare serious expression. "I hope you know what can happen if things go south, boy. Are you ready to accept it?" Shikaku asked and Gaara simply nodded. With a roar, Shikaku sent a final surge of chakra to Gaara as he sent him out of the seal. In the real world, Gaara nearly fell to the ground as raw agony flooded through his body before with a roar a crimson cloak of chakra covered him and soon spread to the sand, giving it crimson markings. Gaara held his hands out in front of him, and in moments a massive tailed beast ball formed in front of him as sand swirled around him and took the form of a miniature Shikaku behind him. The Goliath roared as it forced its way out of what should have been its tomb. "He's going to destroy it," the figure on the ink bird stated before the bird took off from the wall of the village, the dead guards in pieces around them. But he was only a diversion. "By Jadama!" Gaara roared and the sphere launched off with a roar before it slammed into the figure just as it shattered its prison with a final roar. The explosion was titanic and would have destroyed Suna if Gaara hadn't used his strengthened sand as a shield, the crimson veins across it glowing with the power of Shikaku. Gaara allowed the chakra cloak to fade away and allowed himself a small grin at his victory before he turned his attention to the smaller ink and sane creatures held by Sunanin at the gates. "I'll take care of them now," Gaara muttered as his sand lost the crimson veins across it in moments and it instead shot towards the ink and sand creatures, shaping into various blades to skewer them as Gaara used the last remnants of Shikaku's chakra to form seals across the sand. The attack collapsed through. Blue vein-like markings spread across Gaara's body, and he screamed as pain lanced through him, an all-consuming pain that left him falling out of the sky. Kankuro! Kankuro! The puppet master heard his little brother screaming for him and swiftly turned to the squad of 10 jonin following him. Each of you get a squad together and get a perimeter watch on the walls now, Kankuro quickly ordered before leaping off. Baki noticed him moving as well as the rapidly falling Gaara and quickly put 2 and 2 together. Even with the modified seal and Shikaku's new attitude, the taint of his chakra is still malicious. Baki thought in shock before turning to the confused Chunin covering the rooftop he stood on. Keep those birds away from the village and keep that ink from striking the ground, Baki ordered before leaping away, and he easily caught up with Kankuro as both saw Gaara slam into the ground in the distance. Gaara clutched at his head as the blue veins moved across his body, the whispers in his mind overwhelming him and causing him to scream. Shikaku, what is going on? Gaara managed to ask. Kill. Stop, please. Blood. No, not again, please not again. Give me blood. Kill. No. Blood now. Shikaku watched from the seal as Gaara's mind was consumed by these thoughts and cursed. I never expected my chakra to hold so much negative emotion still, but I warned the boy this plan was risky at best and downright terrible at worse. Shikaku muttered as he paced up and down his cage before settling down near the front of it. Pull through this brat, I don't feel like getting a new host again. Gaara! Kankuro called out as he scanned the deserted streets from the rooftops. Gaara, answer me. Where is he? Baki asked as he landed next to Kankuro with 3 jonin behind him. I don't know. Help me find him before it's too late, Kankuro shouted before leaping off. You heard him, scatter and search, Baki ordered the jonin behind him before leaping off himself. Baki found the collapsed Gaara first, and just as snakes made of ink shot towards him. He threw several explosive kunai and he prayed his hurried plan worked. The explosions turned the snakes into ink and also triggered Gaara's shield of sand, stopping the exploding ink from killing him. Baki landed next to Gaara as he unsealed a signal flare from his pouch and fired it into the air, quickly calling the others to him. Kankuro leaped off of the rooftop above him and crouched down next to Gaara. Gaara, what's wrong? Kankuro asked as he reached out to lay a hand on his shoulder only for sand to wrap around it and toss him aside. They keep screaming at me. Gaara nearly screamed as he slammed his head into the ground, shattering the armor of sand there. Why won't they leave me alone? The 3 jonin landed next and were immediately tossed away by blasts of sand. He's still retraining himself. That would have normally crushed them. Baki thought in shock as he observed the shaking form of his Kazekage. The sheer amount of will he would need to fight off the tainted chakra is astounding, but where is it coming from? He reached out to Gaara only for his hand to be slapped away by sand, and he wisely leaped back in time to stop a crudely shaped blade form slamming into him, instead hitting the ground and bursting into sand once again. Baki spotted ink birds dive bombing Gaara, and he quickly leapt onto a rooftop as he flashed through hand signs. Futon. Blade of wind. Baki called out and blades of wind shot forward and shredded the ink birds before a gust of wind from his palms blasted the explosive ink into the air. Ink mice raced out of the alleys towards Gaara only to be captured in 4 salamander puppets emerging from underneath the ground. Kankuro on a rooftop with 3 large scrolls unrolled around him. Black ant. Kankuro called out as chakra threads launched from his fingers and into seals one of the scrolls. For blurs launched form the scrolls before diving off the rooftop and picking up a salamander each before moving high into the air. Kankuro was straining himself now as he controlled 8 puppets. Come on, get higher. Kankuro told himself before he allowed the salamanders to dump their captives before the black ants each dropped a bomb that blew apart the ink creations before 2 of the black ants' arms shot off and formed into 3 crude fans and blew the ink away. Baki quickly moved down to Gaara again and dodged the blades of sand that crumbled on impact. Kazekage, fight it, Baki called out as he was thrown back by a wave of sand. You swore to yourself to protect Sunagakure. Baki didn't know if his words reached the red-headed Kazekage, but he prayed they did. The blue veins across the sand were turning black and taking a very familiar shape. Baki, I'll handle this, Kankuro shouted down to the Jonin commander as he called his many puppets back to him. Go get the village ready for the worst, just in case. Baki only nodded as he leapt off. Both knew of the worst-case scenario. Shikaku once again emerging, and there was no telling what he would do once free again. It could be either good or bad, but in the shinobi world you were always ready for the worst. Come on, Gaara. You can beat this. Kankuro shouted down to him as he ducked under a clawed sand arm, while also using Black Ant to launch explosives into a swarm of ink mice. Please, Gaara, get through this quick. I can't keep up all of this by myself. Kankuro silently pleaded as he leapt onto the back of one of the Black Ant puppets and used it to hover in the air as he quickly resealed the salamanders he had summoned before replacing them with crows. Get down here, boy. You're stressing yourself even more this way. A voice suddenly spoke, and Kankuro felt himself pulled to the ground as the puppet he was on was destroyed from inside. Chiyo-sama? Kankuro asked as he slowly stood up and came face to face with the elderly gray-haired puppet master. Of course, I couldn't allow my most promising student in the last decade kill himself out here, Chiyo announced as she pulled the 3 giant scrolls Kankuro had to her and chakra threads shot from each finger. I'll play a little bit of offense while you focus on keeping Gaara from hurting anyone. We'll have each other's backs. Hi, Chiyo-sama. Kankuro answered with a grin as the two were consumed in a burst of smoke. Gaara's mindscape. The Kazekage groaned as he slowly dragged himself to a crouch before someone's foot landed on his back and pushed him down. Look at you, pathetic. I can't believe I became something like you. A voice unmistakable to Gaara spoke. I'm not you anymore. Gaara growled out as sand slowly moved around him. I am nothing like you anymore. The sand shot forward as a colossal wave that covered the figure before black veins spread across it, and with a bestial roar from within it launched outward and turned into a mass of clawed hands that shot towards Gaara. The Kazekage leapt back to avoid it, and his hands balled into fists as blades of sand formed from the desert beneath his feet and shot towards the figure. The red head under attack from the blades merely chuckled, and with a wave of his hand the blades turned on their wielder. Gaara leapt into the air to avoid them, and a platform of sand formed beneath his feet. Are you really at your best? Where's the killing intent? The figure asked him as he was raised up by a vortex of sand at his feet. Where is that bloodlust? With his hands shooting forward, bullets of sand shot towards Gaara, who clenched his hands into a fist, stopping the attack cold before it began swirling around the figure before with his other fist clenched it imploded and shaped itself into a sphere. Gaara let out a sigh as he lowered to the ground. Finally, he's gone, Gaara muttered before he had to dodge a clawed hand of sand from ripping through him from behind. You really think that could kill me? The figure roared as a giant versio of themselves rose out of the desert in front of Gaara. Do you really think you can kill your own hatred? Gaara glared at his 12-year-old self as sand swirled around him, slowly lifting him into the air again. I will stop you. I will not allow you to endanger my village or my shrines ever again. Gaara roared as the sand behind him obeyed his will, and he felt another presence enter his sand. I am the 5th Kazekage, and I will kill you. The giant form of Shikaku formed behind him and roared in agreement as from within his cage the Tanuki grinned. Go get him, kid. It's about time you dealt with this. Naruto was getting tired. Slowly, but it was happening. He flipped back to avoid Jet's swing aimed to scissor him between the 2 hook swords before he slashed down with one of his Camillo swords only for Jet to block the blade with one and aim to punch off Naruto's head with the blades over his knuckles. The Uzumaki ducked under the blow even as his other Camillo sword shot up and would have cleaved off Jet's arm if he hadn't decided to leap back while throwing a fury of explosive kunai down towards Naruto, who quickly leapt back to avoid them and turned to cut the razor-sharp wire strings forming a net behind him. Explosive tags planted on the tree he landed on forced him to leap back into the clearing even as he cut the shuriken thrown towards him in half while also deflecting them to the side with good reason as the metal immediately exploded on impact with the ground. Fighting him with his swords are hard enough. When he starts using his traps and starts throwing stuff at me, it gets nearly impossible to even throw a few of my own attacks out there. Naruto thought with a sigh as he threw the tip of one sword into the ground and landed on it with one foot as his pistol formed in that hand. Zero, Naruto whispered as he fired another shot towards Jet, who easily dodged it only to come face to face with a grinning Naruto with both pistols now out as his sword landed in the tree behind Jet. Zero Metrolita, Naruto called out as he fired a barrage of Zero towards Jet even as he flipped over him and landed with his feet on the flat of the blade. Jet rolled on the ground as he emerged from the explosions and grinned as Naruto once again formed his Camillo blades. Why don't you give up? Naruto asked as his breaths came in pants. You can't win. Jet only grinned as he sent a surge of chakra to his swords. You moron, I don't have to beat you. I just have to delay you. Jet answered, and Naruto cursed as he saw the convoy far off in the distance. It was moving. Enough of this. Naruto growled as he leapt into the air and aimed both guns down towards the convoy. Blood dripped into the barrels from a cut on Naruto's shoulder, and Naruto growled his next words. Gran Rey Zero. Naruto roared as a massive blue supercharged Zero roared towards the convoy and slammed into it in a titanic explosion. He landed on the ground and turned to Jet, energy pouring out of the two guns. Think you want to keep this up? Naruto asked Jet, who simply chuckled as he stepped back. My job's done, it was a decoy anyway, Jet answered before he leapt backwards into the trees as he sheathed his swords. Naruto cursed as he holstered his guns and quickly vanished from sight in a burst of smoke. He collapsed midway to the convoy moments later, clutching at his head. What the hell? Naruto asked himself as he struggled to even move at the pain shooting through his head. What is going on? Emige cure. Taka screamed as he felt nothing but sheer agony, and soon he couldn't even do that. Are you finished yet, Itachi? Conan asked. His screams are getting very, very annoying. Not yet, but I've damaged his shields during my attacks on his mind. Itachi answered as he stepped away from the suspended Taka. With Naruto. Something is wrong, something is very wrong. Naruto told himself as he dragged himself to his feet as the pain subsided. Pain, leader, Rinnegan. The sudden shout in his mind nearly put him on the ground, and he recognized Taka's voice. That was a failsafe, an immediate but short link. Naruto spoke out loud as he shook off the effects. What happened to him for him to use that? Naruto slowly moved down the road and up to the destroyed convoy, and seeing it couldn't even be searched for anything, he ended up simply blasting it with Los Lobos again. Naruto sealed his Zanpakuto and quickly formed several hand signs before slamming a hand on the ground. A seal spread from his hand, and in a poof of smoke an identical Naruto appeared. Go meet up with the others and use that old personality. I need to go handle something. Naruto ordered the transformed corpse that sprung to life before rushing off. With Shino. Mika laughed as Shino charged her, his chakra wrapping around him, but she knew it was useless against her. Time to die. Mika shouted as she threw 3 senbon forward from each hand, the small weapons aimed to each hit for a certain kill. Shino held up his arms and allowed the senbon to pierce them before they were devoured, with Kakachu swarming out the wound. So, you're the clan heir? Mika asked Shino, who didn't respond, only moving forward again. So he's gone and used that technique? Mika asked herself even as she dodged Shino's blow and threw several explosive senbon that Kakachu intercepted before Shino slammed a hand on the ground. Bug burst out of the ground from his palm, and Mika cursed as she leapt into the trees, only to be followed by the swarm of Kakachu. There, that should take care of her. Shino thought with a sigh of relief as the swarm decimated anything in their path. I've sent those bugs into a frenzy. They'll tear her to pieces now. Senbon shot towards him, and Kakachu immediately intercepted them, being blown apart as a second volley raced past them in the smoke. Shino rolled out of the way of them with little effort and very quickly, only to sit up straight into a third volley that turned him into a pincushion. Got you, bastard! Mika shouted as she unleashed a fourth volley on Shino before rushing forward, 3 senbon held between each finger in her left hand as the right reached behind her for something. Time to die. Undisclosed location, somewhere in the land of grass. One Orochimaru smirked even if he was bedridden, a sudden illness weakening him, at least for the next few days until his body would adapt to it. Normally, he wouldn't even had caught anything, but his current body was beginning to reject him. I have no doubt this is Sasuke's doing, Orochimaru thought as he saw the door open. This is probably him. He was right as the last Uchiha stepped into the room, closing the door behind him. Orochimaru, how are you? The Sannin laughed at the Uchiha's question as he sat up from his lying down position. Get to the point, student. I have important things to do very soon, Orochimaru told him as the Uchiha didn't disappoint. So why are you here, brat? I'm here to kill you. A sword shot forward only for Orochimaru to roll off the bed and onto his feet, and the sidestep the swing aimed to take off his arm and dig into his side. You fool. I taught you everything you know about Kinjutsu, Orochimaru shouted as he formed several hand signs before taking a deep breath. Katan, fire dragon bullet? The snake Sannin called out as he fired a multitude of streams of fire, each taking the shape of a dragon that attacked from all angles. Chidori Blast. The chirping of birds was heard as the fires in front of the Uchiha were thrown back by a wave of lightning as the Uchiha rushed forward behind it, his sword held in one hand with the other reaching into a pouch at his waist. Doton, Stone Golem, Orochimaru called out as he spit out a rapidly expanding stone only for its head to be removed by the Uchiha blade as he leaped over it. I taught you better than I thought, Orochimaru commented even as he slammed a hand on the wall behind him, and it crumbled away to show a more open space behind it. But you forget I expected this. He leapt back into it as he bit both thumbs and slammed a hand on the ground as he landed in a crouch. Summoning Jutsu. In a burst of smoke that engulfed two massive cobras shot forward, their fangs bared and acidic venom dripping onto the floor below them. Katan, Great Fireball, Sasuke called out as he breathed out a stream of fire that shaped itself into a fireball, blasting into the ground and throwing the snakes to the side as the Uchiha rushed Orochimaru with the Sannin grinning even as he dodged the deadly sword swings, each aimed to kill him. He's coated the blade in a poison, Kabuto's doing no doubt, Orochimaru thought as he spotted the drips of it running off the blade. He's also gotten someone to put a seal on it. The poison is constantly replenishing itself, or it's that special one I had in storage, the one that replicates itself with chakra. Forced to dodge another blow that managed to deliver a thin cut to his neck snapped Orochimaru out of his thoughts and he frowned before slamming a hand on the ground. Raitun, Bolt Current. A wave of lightning flowed from his hands and covered the floor in it, and Sasuke didn't even try to avoid it as he allowed it to shoot into him before the chirping of birds were heard yet again. Chidori Bolt. The lightning was redirected to his hand as she thrust it forward and Orochimaru dodged a lightning bolt that would have taken off his head. That was good, Orochimaru thought, a grin showing he was enjoying the fight. I'm surprised he can keep up with me and press me like this even in my weakened state. He dodged a kunai thrown at him and disarmed it of its explosive tag before throwing it back towards Sasuke on a shuriken which was avoided, but at the speed he planted it the Uchiha was caught in the explosion and thrown to the side by the shockwave. He recovered in midair and stabbed his sword into the ground to stop himself before running through hand signs as he left the sword there. Raitun, Dragon's Roar, Sasuke called out as electricity shot forward, taking the shape of a dragon head that roared as Orochimaru merely grinned wider. Suetun, Water Basin Palm. The burst of water from his palm was electrified as it acted as a shield before shooting towards Sasuke, who cursed as he grabbed his sword and leapt onto the ceiling, hanging upside down to avoid the now water-filled room. He formed several hand signs as he sheathed his sword and took a deep breath, but his red eyes found nothing. Orochimaru was gone. Futon, Decapitating Airwaves. Sasuke was blasted into the far wall by a burst of air from behind him as Orochimaru quickly ran after him with his next set of hand signs already done. Suetun, Water Dragon Bullet. Dragons of water emerged from the flooded room below him and they shot into Sasuke as he slammed into the wall, the electrified water both shocking him and sending him crashing through the wall from the force of the impact. Orochimaru destroyed part of the wall with an explosive kunai and leapt through the hole to see Sasuke tossed into the middle of the room by the attack, and he quickly finished his next hand signs. Doton, Swamp of the Underworld. Sasuke felt himself sink into the ground and cursed but quickly thought of a plan as Orochimaru landed in front of him. Sunagakure. The village was mainly undamaged from the sudden attack and the Kazekage's speedy intervention, but he was trapped in a sphere of sand, forced to deal with his inner demon from his use of Shikaku's power. Is it wise to allow the Kazekage to remain as he is? We don't know if he will win, and now is the opportune time to take action against him. Kankuro really hated the council sometimes. He had tried to talk Gaara into expanding it and turning it more into an advisory, but his brother was busy with other things and the council never had much power anyway. It always fell onto the Kazekage to make the final decisions. These bastards are talking about killing him. Kankuro truly hated the council at this moment, and only Baki's look from across the table had him restrain himself enough to speak calmly. Do you really think this is necessary? Kankuro asked, hiding his anger under a calm facade. At least for now. Shouldn't we at least think of an alternative or see definitive proof the Kazekage is about to lose control? It is a major risk to the village. It would be better if we didn't take the chance. We have several candidates for a new Jinchuriki as well. A second council member spoke up and Kankuro recognized him as Bato, a council member he could hold a conversation with as they were a former puppet master who was forced to retire after meeting a group of Rouge Hyuga during a mission and having his chakra pathway system damaged during the battle, but managing to kill all but one of the Hyuga. If Shikaku is released or the Kazekage reverts back to his previous personality, either way we will face something that could destroy the village in little time and with little reasons. I agree, but I have faith in my brother, and Lady Chiyo has created a seal around him, so if the worst happens the One-Tails will be restrained long enough to seal it again. Kankuro hoped he could delay the council enough, and for once he thanked the long process of politics. That is debatable, as we have called her skills into question. Her seal on the Kazekage allowed Shikaku to influence the boy to a degree that we have seen in no other Jinchuriki. Batou responded and Baki chose to join the conversation. I have also posted a dozen jonin skilled in sealing around the area, and they will interfere before things get too out of hand. They've all walked together as a unit in the past, so I see no reason that they could not handle the problem. Baki's words seemed to help Batou as he nodded. Then if such precautions have been taken, I see no reason not to take a wait-and-see approach. Batou's answer relived both Baki and Kankuro, and with the biggest threat to Gaara agreeing on waiting, they had some breathing room. A few minutes after the council clearly had planned to have Batou talk the two into agreeing, and with that failure their own arguments were lackluster. Not much else to say that Batou hadn't already said. Somewhere in the land of wind. Soon as attacker finally reached the border on their ink bird and looked down at the burning watch post, having sent birds ahead to destroy it. It seems like I am in the clear, the figure thought right before a wave of wind slammed into him, destroying his ink bird and forcing him to land in the trees nearby. Get over here, you bastard! A voice shouted, and the figure cursed as Gaara's sister Temari sent a more razor-sharp crescent of wind with a swing of her fully opened fan. The trees were easily cut down by it, and the figure quickly drew out a scroll with one hand and drew something on it and rushed through the trees as the three lions sent forward were torn apart and rained down as explosive ink, the figure hoping to kill the kunoichi in the ensuing explosion. He had no such luck, as the ink was batted aside with a swipe of Temari's fan as she raced after the figure, folding her fan as she leapt into the trees and placing it on her back with one hand as the other drew two smaller fans from her side. Damn, intelligence said nothing about her power. It's unlucky that she caught me. With Kakashi and Shikamaru, the silver-haired Jonin sat thinking, trying to work out a strategy to deal with the very likely idea that they had missed the shipment or the information was wrong, and this was all a diversion for the real one to move around undisturbed. Either way, this mission will most likely be a failure. Karinia and Kiba. The sounds of a fight had them pick up speed and appeared just as Hinata finished striking down the last of the 8 Chunin guards around her as Karinia shot forward and intercepted 2 Jonin aiming to cut her down with a pair of kunai in each of their hands, while Kiba and Akamaru attacked the second squad of Chunin behind them, rushing to attack the two as their comrades were dealt with. Kiba, Hinata, fall into formation, Kurenai ordered, and moments later Kiba and Hinata stood next to her with Naruto's clone stepping in front of them and holding his sword out to his side. I can handle this. The main part of it got ahead of us while these 4 squads delayed us. The clone told them, and a look to Hinata confirmed it, and moments later Kurenai sent the 2 Chunin and 1 dog forward. You can go on ahead too, Naruto's clone told her as Kurenai remained. She decided to, but as she leapt into the trees she created a shadow clone to watch the battle, filled with just enough chakra to stay hidden and watch with combat out of its league. Pierce, Ganryumaru. The clone spoke, and his katana seemed to be struck by lightning as it flashed before it changed into a rapier, electricity crackling off of it before with a slight strain it was under control and coating the blade. Let's see what you can do, Ganryumaru told the remaining 24 Chunin and 8 Jonin before rushing forward.